Good morning, people connected online. Am I audible, visible? Can you please confirm? Please send a text message. All right, thank you, Aishwarya, Mahesh, Rudresh, Swar for your answers. Okay. All right, so you're here for the economics optional demo, right? Before we start with the session, what we have in plan is just run you through the syllabus, understand what is inside to see if you can cope with it, and give you an idea about how the classes are going to be, how much time it would take, what are the source material that you can refer to. I'll also show you a 1 year's previous year question paper, so 2024, which is the most recent that we have. We'll take a look at the question paper to see how it aligns with the syllabus. I'll try to link questions with the syllabus and see how much they stick to it. And you can also get introduced to how the subject is. So that is the intention of today's class. Won't be very lengthy, couple of hours at max. That's what I'm expecting it to be. Okay, at max is what I'm saying. Depending on any questions that you have after that. If you have any questions also, you can ask then and there when I'm saying something. If you have a particular question with respect to that, you can ask me that, or else you can ask me later as well, at the end of it as well. For those who are not aware, my name is SARATH. I've been teaching economics here since 2018 and economics optional. Full time I've been taking for the last 3 years. So you'll be the fourth batch, but I've taken optional prior to that as well. So 2018 itself I've taken, but that was a time when I was myself preparing. So sometimes I would take, sometimes, Vaishnavi ma'am, right? The managing director of the institute. She would take, so we used to switch half and half. So we used to do it that way. So full time I started taking 3 years back, 2022, 23, 24, 3 years batches I've taken. This is my fourth batch of taking the classes. Okay, so that's about who I am. Before I go into it, I just want to understand your profile, as in what is your background and do you already have some knowledge of economics or do you not? Is it just exploratory? I want to understand that. Okay, so who wants to go first? Will you? Shall I pick? There's someone who's keen on telling me about why you are here.
During the school days, we learn economics. In college, complete semester, there will be one paper.
Okay.
Fully complete economics, but partially.
Yeah, some basic introduction to it. Okay. Why are you considering it as an option? Do you have any other choice? You have an interest in subject. Anything else that you're looking at? Have you decided or are you just considering? What else do you have in your mind? Or economics, one of those two. Okay, fine. What about you?
I have my
Alan James. Okay.
graduation course.
Okay.
So economics is out of interest, and I have one question.
Hmm.
Comparatively, economics is said to be a lot more time consuming.
Correct.
So will be, students from commerce background, will that be okay to take economics option, or should we consider taking other options?
Can I answer this towards the end? I'll answer this definitely because I'm sure similar questions will be there. It will be if I answer your question, it will be very specific to it. I'll give a more generic answer. If you're not satisfied, we'll once again take this question up at the end. Okay. Sorry? Pure student, yeah.
With my graduation in BSc Mathematics, I'm here for any ideas about the economics classes.
Just to know. What other options do you have? Mathematics itself? Definitely no. Okay. That tends to happen. People do graduation in something and they want to stay away from that subject as much as possible. I understand your. Okay. How about you? Ilavarsi. Okay. Become.
Any ideas? 12th, my subject economics. Become first year, first sem micro
Economics.
Then I choose economic background. I know.
You have some idea about it. Okay. Yeah.
Just
Thinking of taking it. What other choice do you have? PSIR. Okay. Totally different field, no? That is also something you have interest in. Okay. From my recently completed class, tell me.
Yes, Parliament.
Paradiman, tell me. English literature. Okay. Curiosity. What other choices do you have? Why not English literature? Depth is more. Poetry is difficult or prose is more difficult? Okay. BA Economics. Where from? Okay. I hear very good things about your college in terms of, in terms of, why are you laughing? You are also from there. Same class. I hear that they do a good job of teaching, unlike many other places where they say there's no teaching at all. Tell me, please correct me if I'm wrong. Last batch, I had someone from MOP. Maybe you're senior. Huh? Sure. சும்மா சொல்றீங்களா உண்மையிலேவா அப்படியா இது கலாய்க்கிற மாதிரி இருக்கு right with a lot of focus on developmental economics I hear behavioral developmental interesting okay econometrics also very important for research papers no okay what's your name you say Kausalya okay so no doubt about this is what you are going to take or decide okay Himadri okay B economics only or classmates you said
Take economics only, but I think second that it's vast syllabus and books. So many of them are advising me not to take economics. I actually saw syllabus of different subjects, but I was not interested in all those things.
Okay. Okay, this is something that I'll address as well. One common feeling many people have is the size of the subject itself, time that it would take and all those things, and scoring. Yeah, scoring is that's also something that I'll address, whether it is a high scoring subject or not. So I'll address that also. And the interest part is also very important. 4 very important points you have covered that I would like to cover about, you touched upon. So I'll do that as well. Yeah.
Out of my interest, when I rush to the syllabus, I have chosen with economics. So I have my one more optional as commerce and accountancy, either economics or commerce and accountancy.
Okay. About you?
I'm in PhD Wilson. I'm a law grad. I don't have any. It's just a commerce student, but then I had some interest in economics and in political science. So I chose law and written my specialization in arbitration and taxation. Now I have I'm considering economics as well as PSA.
PSA. So PSAR seems to be my direct competitor. A lot of people with that. Commerce and accountancy, I can understand it's somewhere, some kind of a overlap is there, but PSAR like 2 separate areas, but strong competition. Okay. Srivatsan, you said, right? Okay. Srinath, are you going to attend classes? No, that's decided. No, just to orient yourself to the subject. Okay. So tell so that everyone knows.
Just in economics,
Masters in economics. What was your bachelor's in? In economics only. Bachelor's, okay. And master's from IIT, okay. IAS. Okay. No brainer for you. Okay. Name? Divesh. Okay. Divesh. Commerce background. What other choice do you have? Okay. Your inclination is towards economics. Okay.
Computer science so
Where from? SRM. Okay.
So I'm just thinking about PSAR and
Oh yeah, these two the options that are in competition. I don't. Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. All right. Interestingly, during my days of preparation after economics, my favorite subject was also polity. So interestingly, something about economics and maybe it's the I don't know what is it something. Which batch are you from? Sadhana batch 3. The one we are currently doing evening batch 5:30 to 8. Okay, face seems familiar, but I couldn't place which batch you are from. You're also in the same batch, aren't you? Yeah. Okay. You, I remember because we had a conversation previously about this. But, yeah. How about you two?
So myself, Monica, I will second.
Where from? Stella Maris. Yeah, again, a college about which I've heard good things. Last year we had one student who came to class, one who was interested in the subject as well from Stella Maris, and we have had students previously also. You feel confident with your basics and all? Okay, fair enough. So decided or one of the options? Decided. Okay. What about you? Erilovia. Okay, Erilovia. Same, classmates. Okay. My way of teaching. Okay, fine. GS classes are very, very different from optional classes. In terms of how the class will be conducted itself, it's going to be very different. Okay, just letting you know. You can sit through a few classes. At that time, if you feel that your class it was not like I expected, you reconsider. Don't base your decisions on just the faculty alone. But then, yeah, subject you are interested in, right? That's the primary thing. Yeah, no, okay. Edilovia, is it? Okay. Renuka Devi. Tell me. Sivagasi, okay. Interest, okay. Any other choices? Oh, bad. Still under consideration or in the past you considered? Still under consideration, okay. Parvata Yogeshri, okay. Hmm. Both are vast subjects, is what everyone says. 30% towards history, okay. Fair enough. There are quite a lot of people online. Well, I'm glad that some of you have started answering. I'll just go through and read what you have written. Okay, yeah. Malini says, BCom background. Can I choose economics as an optional? I'll address that. BCom graduate. I did economics in 11th and 12th. After that first year, I did business economics, Indian economy. May I take economics because I don't have any other option? When you don't have any other option, there's no question. That's the only thing that you have. We'll discuss that. Anyone else? There's quite a lot of people, 45. I'd like some kind of a response from some others as well, not just queries. People who are considering, or you can, because addressing one-to-one might be very difficult for people who are online. But if you have something to contribute, I'd like to hear something to add, some interesting reason why you are considering the subject. Please send it across. I'll take a look at it in the middle of it. Okay. So first I'll run you through the syllabus. What is there inside the syllabus and what are the books that we are going to follow for each of these. I'll introduce you to those things. As a part of that, I'll deal with the size also. As a part of that, introducing the syllabus, I'll tell you about the volume of the subject also with respect to each of these sub-subjects that is there, subheadings that are there. And then after that, we'll take a look at some previous year questions, link it. Then we'll start addressing all the questions, whether what he started, you said from commerce background, whether it is a viable option, what about the size and all those things. We'll address all of those things. Okay. First of all, have any of you seen the syllabus? Yeah. So you put in your effort. You have, it's okay. I'll introduce you to the syllabus itself. For those who are not aware, you can find the syllabus in the notification, prelims notification that appears. You can find it there. Ranjit, Sadhana batch 4, we have already spoken before. Yes, I'm from commerce background. I'm generally interested in economics, although my other option, history, is harder than I thought. Okay. That's input for you. History seems harder than it. But yeah, everyone has their own preferences. I remember you, Ranjit. We have interacted on So those who have interacted with me previously, those who have asked for it, I've shared some material to start off with as well, just to see if the subject is fine. So I'll do that for you as well. Although we are starting the class next week, next Sunday we'll start our classes. The initial 2 or 3 classes is going to be very slow because there will still be more people considering, reconsidering. So if we cover too much in the beginning few classes, they might find it a little difficult to catch up. So the initial classes would be probably I'll take paper 2, which is, I'll again tell you what is paper 2, which is relatively simpler to deal with. Okay, we'll deal with that. And then maybe towards the end of July, mid to later part of July, first week is when we are starting, right? July 6th is the first day of class. So maybe after July 15 or somewhere around that, we'll gradually get into the core part of the subject itself. One more person has texted. Ovia, there is also Tirumangai, sorry, I read it wrong. Sir, from engineering background, came to know about Indian economy from GS out of interest, would like to choose economics as optional. Okay, I'll address that part as well. Pursuing BCom honors, considering economics as I'm from commerce background, my other options are maths and sociology. Does economics optional include current affairs? It does, but I'll address that specifically over here. Okay, please sit down. So what we were doing is everyone was introducing themselves and saying what is the reason you are considering economics as an optional, and what is your background in terms of your graduation, and if you have any other choice and optional, that also. Start. Okay. Okay. You have chosen it, no doubt about it. Okay, fair enough.
My name is Shankari. I have done my graduation
Sankareshwari Shankari. Okay.
mathematics in Funding College for Women in Business.
Hmm.
And the reason I also for GS paper also.
You have chosen, decided, huh? Illa considering some other option also.
In the demo class.
Okay, still in the decision making process. Okay. Only. Decided. Why? Like the subject. Very good. Thank you. Is it possible to score in economics without current affairs? This is a question that Malini has. I'll address that. I'm Devishri. I've graduated from BSc in Information Technology. Currently confused about choosing an optional. Everything feels new. Concern is finding a subject that is easy and manageable. Okay. I'd like to go for MA Economics after BS interest in subject. We'll use as backup option, but unable to decide between other options. Ritik. All right. Fair enough. Anyone else online? If you have something, please send across. I'll take a look at it. Someone has. Does economics have high overlap with GS? I'll address that. Okay. So let's look at the easier paper then to start with. So there is economics paper 1 and there is economics paper 2. What is easy, what is difficult, as you would know already from life choices itself, it's very, very subjective. What is easy for one person need not be easy for another person. So when I say what is easy, it is in terms of your prior knowledge, already some knowledge that you would have. Take a look at paper 2. I'll just go through the syllabus. Paper 2 is basically economic history. It's actually history. History moving towards current affairs. So it's almost like in history you have the ancient, medieval, modern, and post-independence consolidation, right? So very similarly in history in economics of paper 2, we don't go to the ancient, medieval and all those things. We come to directly modern, but from a historical perspective, when the Britishers were in India, what was the economic situation? We don't even go in depth into what was before the Britishers. There is just a transition that we'll talk about, that when the Britishers came to India, this is how the Indian economy was. And from there, what are the changes that the Britishers brought about, the good and the bad of it. So that is the first part. Indian economy in pre-independence era, land system and its changes. You are all aware probably of the Zamindari system being introduced, the land settlement systems that were Rayat Wari, Mahal Wari. There are 3 land reforms main rand forms that were there. Commercialization of agriculture, those who have studied a little bit of history would know that our cropping patterns itself changed from mainly food crops to cash crops, because Britain came to India with India as a market for raw materials. So they had to make us produce the raw materials that they required for their industrial revolution. So a discussion about that, what was the way in which the commercialization happened. Then there is an associated theory called as drain theory, which is given by Indian economists, which was given by Indian economists of that period. Most important of all economists among the historic economic historians are a person called as Dadabhai Nauroji. So you would have heard of it with respect to Indian National Congress as well. So he has written economic critique of British rule in India. He has in fact written a book called as Poverty and Un-British Rule in India. So this concept of drain theory is directly from that. And again, a very important theory in understanding the impact of British rule on India. Okay. Then there is a concept called as laissez-faire theory and its critique about, it's a British policy of how they undertook trade and other business activities in India. Critique of that. The impact of the British rule on manufacturing, mainly secondary sector, transportation, mainly we talk about railways, but a lot of other areas also. Then specifically with respect to manufacture, jute, cotton, with respect to transport, railways, and we have the money and credit system, which is Britishers are the ones who introduced the modern banking system to India. Britishers are the ones who made rupee as a widespread currency of transaction. They introduced the Reserve Bank of India. So we talk about all of those things. This is a very, very static region, very, very small area to learn. Definitely 50 marks, 40 to 60 marks every year in the question paper would appear from this in paper 2. Okay. Very, very static area. So you study it one time, if you make a note of it, there is nothing to add to it. Okay, it's an area where you can actually memorize the answers and go and write, not by sitting and mugging up. You read it a few times, it will automatically stick in your mind. There is no effort that is required in this particular area, right? So that is the type of area that Indian economy in the pre-independence era is. Okay, and that is why in terms of putting in effort to learn, we can consider this to be comparatively easier, even for people who feel that I'm not particularly good with numbers, I can't add numbers, data. For a lot of people who are considering economics an optional, data is their biggest concern. So I think there was a person who asked about current affairs also. The biggest problem that we see when we read newspaper, even for GSS, oh, there are so many numbers. There is one number now, one number later. How many do I remember? You don't have to. These are very, very static things. So there are numbers that you have to quote for scoring a little more. If you don't put any numbers also, you will get some basic marks. Let's say if you write out of 10, you will get 3.5 marks. But if you add those numbers, your 3.5 could become 4.5 or 5, maybe a little more than that as well. So those numbers add value. They are not like crucial, but if you don't have them, your overall marks can sort of be at an average level. But remembering those numbers, it's not like constantly you have to go and update yourself with respect to that. Half of paper 2 is static. In the sense, once you study, there's no change that is going to happen to it. History itself is static, right? You don't go and change history. So this is something that's absolutely static. And the source of references are also static. There is no update that's going to happen with respect to that. One-time effort, create a note, that's it. It's only about revising that after that. There's hardly any forgetting also that's going to happen because it's very, very limited syllabus also. Okay, that's one part. Then we divide, then we introduce the second part, which is Indian economy after independence. And after independence itself is divided into two. You might know there is a major economic landmark that happened in India was in 1991, the liberalization, LPG reforms, you could say, new economic reforms. We refer to that as, in general, as liberalization. So we have the pre-liberalization era and we have the post-liberalization era. Okay, in this, once again, pre-liberalization era is from 1950 to 1991. Static, no change is going to happen and what happened during that time. We are simply going to sit and learn what happened during that period of time. What are the various events that happened? Mainly in agriculture, what happened? In industry, what happened? Primary sector, secondary sector. Our tertiary sector was not very well developed at that point of time. In the sense, tertiary sector did exist, but today if we say tertiary sector, which sector mainly comes to our mind in terms of revenue generation? IT sector, banking, IT sector, all those things. They came into prominence in the 80s and subsequently post-liberalization. So it is not very significant for our pre-liberalization learning. You look at the heading itself. So I'm directly jumping to the second one, agriculture. Then you have industry. These are the two crucial things. In agriculture, we have land reforms. You know, after independence, we undertook land reforms like maximum land that a person could hold, the relationship between the landowner and the tiller, abolition of the concept of zamindari. In the British period, they introduced that. So those kind of things, land reforms and land tenure system. You have all at least heard of Green Revolution. So what is Green Revolution? What were the what necessitated it, what are the mechanisms, then an analysis of it. What worked well, what did not quite work well, those things, in which regions was it properly implemented, was it not implemented, that kind of an analysis. Then capital formation in agriculture. Capital formation refers to introduction of machinery and investment in agriculture. It need not be machinery, it could be something like more and more irrigation canals being built. That is also capital formation, dams being built. All those efforts that were done during that period, we just need to learn what is the effort that the government undertook during that point of time, what is the result of that. Okay, very static once again, that's the second one. Third, industry trends in composition and growth. What did India's industry, what was it composed of? What were the various industries that were in existence, and what was their performance like? Okay, role of public and private sector, small scale and cottage industries. So it's very specific headings. What was the role of the government in the production process? What is the role of the private in the production process? And one area which for a long period of time was underdeveloped, was not focused enough, but in the 1960s and 70s we started focusing on, was the small scale and cottage industries, right? So that just study about what are the reforms that the government attempted. Most of the reforms did not even work out. So there is hardly any positive analysis that we have to do. We just have to do learning of what happened, why did it not quite work out. That's it. So this was an underperforming area. In agriculture, there's a lot of success. Green Revolution was a success. So there is some success story here. There is mostly why did the sector not grow? That is the learning we have to do over there. These are the two main areas. What else do we have? If was India a very successful economy pre-1991, or can we consider it to be an unsuccessful economy? Unsuccessful. That is why we had to bring about a reform to change the scenario, right? Again, success, not success, and all those things, it depends. But largely, the widely held view is that it is not a success. It was not a successful period for India at that point of time. So if it is not successful, there would obviously be high instances of poverty or lack of growth that happens. That's the two headings. National income and per capita income. What were the patterns? What were the trends? What were the aggregates and sectoral composition? So we take GDP of the country. What are the various sectors? Each sector, how was the performance? Then across time periods, 50 to 60, 60 to 70, 70 to 80, 80 to 90. What were the changes? If you find it very difficult to memorize numbers, you can even break it down into 50 to 65. That's before Green Revolution. 65 to 80, the Green Revolution period. 80 to 90, which was when we actually started bringing about reforms. Break it down into 3 periods and learn numericals for that as well. So that is national income. And the next one, broad factors determining national income and distribution, measures of poverty, trends of poverty and inequality, which is when we don't have very high levels of income, obviously people will be poor. How did we measure poor? And we undertook many measures to measure poverty. Many committees were set up, and what were those committees? What were their recommendations? Those kind of things. What are the mechanisms that we followed in measuring that? So that is the area of it. Again, so these are the 4 areas, and the first one that I have not touched upon is contribution of 3 specific economists, Vakil, Gadgil and VKRV Rao. Just those economists, their list of contributions. What was their contribution? We consider those 3 to be a very significant, to have played a very significant role in Indian economic analysis. Along with it, another name which is not mentioned, but we have to learn about that, is a person called as Mahalanobis. You might have heard of it. India's 5-year plan, the second 5-year plan itself was designed by that person. But because anyway we'll be learning about that plan and Mahalanobis as part of the other areas, is why his name is not specifically mentioned. Whereas some of these people were critiques of what Mahalanobis did or Mahalanobis' principle itself. So this is like the alternative view of what happened in India, or what should have ideally happened in India, or what else could have happened. So the conventional view is there in other areas. The alternative view is what is given by the 3 other economists that is there. So this is all that we have with respect to pre-liberalization. Once again, very static. You learn, you take notes about 2 to 3 pages per topic, and we are done with that. There is nothing to add to it. You have to remember numbers if you want to add value, but no change in numbers will happen. and numbers need not be specifically like something like 23.2%, nothing like that. 23.2 can be rounded off to 25%, roughly 25%, or you can even write it as more than 20%. If percentage is something that scares you, you can write more than 1/5. 20% is 1/5, no? You remember it as 1/5, in the exam you write it as 20%. So you get the feeling, you give them a feeling that you are writing numbers also. So there are various hacks, you could say, that you can follow in the examination to give an impression that you're good at remembering numbers, while you may not actually be particularly great at remembering numbers. If you are good at remembering numbers, nothing better than that. Okay, that's actually will add a lot of value as well. So this is with respect to pre-liberalization era. How we can look at this is, we can break the paper 2 itself into pre-independence and pre-liberalization as one set, because that's completely static. Okay, in the syllabus they have divided into pre-independence and post-independence, but in terms of our learning, pre-independence and pre-liberalization is one set, completely static, 120 to 125 marks up from this area out of 250. Okay, 120 to 125 marks you can get from this area. Half of the paper would be from this area, completely static, no current affairs, nothing of that sort. There was a question that was asked earlier, I think it was a person called Ovia, could be wrong with the name, whether there would be current affairs in economics. The remaining 125 marks is entirely going to be based on current affairs. Okay, you need to update yourself with respect to what is happening in the economy. For example, policies of the government. So you have heard of a concept called as disinvestment. What is the government's disinvestment policy? You have heard of a concept called as public-private partnership. What is the government's public-private partnership policy? Okay, but what I would also say is that you have to learn all of these things even for GS. So you said there is an overlap with GS, that is a factor, right? The overlap with GS is only going to be restricted to 125 marks out of 500. There's paper 1 of 250, paper 2 of 250, of which 125 is going to be static. There's hardly going to be any question from this area in the GS examination, in the static area. GS questions are almost certainly going to be from the post-liberalization era. So 125 marks, there might be overlap. This is to address those who are looking at overlap. I don't think that is significant enough. To take a decision of choosing economics as an optional just because there is an overlap with GS, I do not personally agree with that viewpoint. If you are taking economics as an optional, it should be purely out of the interest in the subject, the love for the subject. Okay, because anyway you have to learn. There are I think other subjects with even more overlap that you will find. Okay, so those who are, if you are considering overlap as a factor, it is like a 4th or 5th reason why you should consider this optional. That should not be the main reason. Main reason should be your love for the subject, your interest in the subject. Whether a subject is a scoring subject or not is also directly related to whether you like the subject or not. If you don't like the subject, the easiest subject will, what others perceive to be easy would be very difficult to score in for you if you don't like that subject. A subject which is supposed to be small in volume, where they say just read this book will cover 1 paper, a second book will cover 2nd paper, done. But if you don't have interest in that subject, you will never be able to complete those 2 books itself. So interest in the subject should be your primary reason for choosing economics as an optional, nothing else. Scoring and all those is byproduct of your interest in the subject. Ability to cover it in a short span of time is a byproduct of your interest in the subject. You take a small subject, you don't have interest, it will go for drag for a year and you might still not cover the syllabus itself. Okay, classes would be over for smaller subjects, but whether you would be able to complete it is what matters. Okay, so because you had mentioned, that is why I took that point up, right? The remaining 125 marks, as a person online had also asked, is going to be current affairs based. If you look at the syllabus will tell you very specific things like new economic reforms and agriculture, what happened in agriculture, new economic policy and industry, what are the strategies of industrial policies, new economic policy and trade, new exchange rate regime, currency exchange rate, new economic policy and public finance, government's role in the economy, new economic policy and monetary system, RBI's role in the economy, planning, from central planning to indicative planning, the various 5-year plans that we had, there was a change in their philosophy, specifically 73rd and 74th constitutional amendments, a 3rd tier of government, your municipalities and panchayats came, and their financial role and their role in overall financial inclusion. And finally, we have a new economic policy and employment, poverty, all those things we can group it together. So employment and poverty, rural wages, employment generation, poverty alleviation schemes, new rural employment guarantee scheme, all of these. Now, in 1991, let us say we had a policy with respect to agriculture. and let us say subsequently in 2022, the government decided to change that. Assume that that happened. Then what you have to learn is not what happened in 1991. What happened now is what you have to learn. Of course, a little bit of a background on what was is necessary to understand what is the change. Similarly, with respect to, say, industry, disinvestment policy. We had a disinvestment policy in 2000, and then subsequently in 2020, there was a change. 2020 is what you need to be knowing. Similarly, foreign direct investment policy. In 2003, there was a change, and subsequently, we have made a few changes. The current changes are what are important. So, although here the syllabus might give us a feeling that it's all about what happened in 1991, one aspect we should never forget about the concept of liberalization is India did not liberalize or become liberalized in 1991. India started becoming liberalized in 1991, which means what? Liberalization is not a completed process. Liberalization is an ongoing process. It started in although we say 1991, it actually started in 1980s itself. But since as a policy, we introduced it in 1991 to even today, we are undergoing liberalization. If you have read the news, you would have come across a concept called as ease of doing business. When we say India is going to improve its ease of doing business, we mean to say we are going to be more liberalized. Okay. Every time the Prime Minister comes and makes statement, we are saying that we are going to promote businesses, we are going to encourage businesses, we are going to make compliance easy. Labor laws were recently amended a year or two back. Liberalization. Okay. Before that, farm laws, there was an attempt at amending it, and then eventually, because of popular protest, they had to reverse it. Liberalization. Everything that we see right now is a move towards further and further liberalization. So whatever happened in the post-liberalization era, it's current affairs. Okay, this part, there is no escaping from current affairs. A compiled version of all the current affairs is available in Economic Survey. But if you are someone who is a regular reader of economic articles and regular reader of newspaper, you said you have interest in economics as a subject, no? So if you are someone who regularly follows economic events and reads or follows up, there is hardly any separate preparation required for this. In fact, in terms of our classroom coverage, this is an area that I'll find very hard to teach you anything, because it's just current events that we can probably sit together and discuss. What we are going to mainly do in this area is when the 2026 economic survey is released in February. Okay, by that time our class would be mostly completed. We'll all get together once again. There will be, I'd assign topics to different people. You would put in the effort to come and present here the economic survey. And that way, because one person doesn't have to go through the whole thing, the class will split it as a responsibility, like a project. And then I'll be there to coordinate this entire process. And finally, based on all the points that you have said, I'll compile it and I'll give you what are the key points from the economic survey. That is the main effort that we are going to put in from this perspective, from this area. Because other than that, there is hardly any static material that is there to give to you. Okay. So in terms of classroom discussions, it's primarily going to be pre-independence, pre-liberalization. The post-liberalization is going to be entirely current affairs driven. I'll keep sharing with you articles of significance. We'll form obviously a Telegram channel, and in the Telegram channel, we'll have an official one where it will be a channel where there's only one-way communication, but we'll also have a second group where it is two-way communication. Anyone who feels that an article that they came across can be quite useful can share it in the group. I'll also be communicating with you for all other classroom related stuff. Direct communication between you and me would be through that group. So we'll be discussing that. So that is how the second part of it is going to be. Okay. Is economic a static subject or a dynamic subject? For 375 marks out of 500, it's a static subject. Paper 2 is entirely static. Sorry, paper 1 is entirely static. Paper 2, 125 marks is static. The remaining 125 marks alone is going to be completely dynamic. Where year after year, let's say you are in your second or third year, and then you're preparing for a 2-year time lag. Okay, so maybe next year is not when you're writing, the year after that is you're writing. Then you'll have to update yourself with respect to the 125 marks alone. So that is an area that however long you're preparing, you need to constantly upgrade yourself with. Again, there will be a lot of areas which you don't have to separate. Every year the government is not going to have a disinvestment policy. Every year the government is not going to have an industrial policy or an agricultural policy. That's one-time effort. Anything else that comes in, for example, new pension scheme was introduced last year. So for those who prepare the year before that, that's an extra learning that they have to do. That is the only kind of updation that you have, not a wholesale update. The basic is still going to be the same. Just if there is any update, labor codes have been reformed, that has to be added to your point. Or India comes up with, say, a few years back, the Niti Aayog came up with something, a report called as National Multidimensional Poverty Index. So then you have to update that. How is that done? What is the process and all those things? Any event of national significance, any economic event of national significance needs to be added to your preparation material. Once you do the basic learning, this addition is not going to be very difficult at all. That first basic learning is where you take up every area and what is the current reality of that, that's how. So there are two ways for you to learn. The class would go in this order: what happened British period, what happened till 1991, and what happened after that through economic survey discussion. In your own note making process, you can even learn it this way: agriculture, British period, pre-liberalization, post-liberalization. You can learn it this way. Industry, British period, how did it transition after independence, pre-liberalization, post-liberalization. Poverty, British period, post-independence, pre-liberalization, post-liberalization. Employment, you can do it this way also. Okay, for your own preparation, that might give you a better flow as well. Then updating would also be comparatively easier. So that's something that individually you can do as a choice. So that is paper 2, which according to me, in terms of preparation, is the easier area. But in terms of scoring marks, many people find it a little difficult to score marks in this area, because everyone would write the basic answer. In the sense, you're asked to write about Green Revolution, basic things about Green Revolution, how to add value to your answer. So that is something that we can only learn through writing practice. So paper 2, once again, we are going to be focusing mainly on answer writing more than the classroom discussions itself. The classroom sessions are going to be completely skewed. When we are going to spend, I'll tell you in a little more detail, we are going to spend roughly 6 to 7 months on the optional. Okay, of that, maybe a month for paper 2 at max. That's all. The remaining period is all going to be for paper 1. So it's going to be very, very skewed. In terms of preparation, there is going to be very less effort that you have to put in to study paper 2. But writing practice is where you need to have more and more of. So as and when we cover certain areas in paper 2, we'll start having more and more tests. So almost on a daily basis, we are going to have class tests. Every day, I'll have maybe about 15 minutes of time dedicated for a test. And I'll have a general discussion about what you have written as well in class. And then at the end of it, if you want specific feedback from me, you can come to me at the end of the class and you can get specific feedback with respect to your answers or your queries with respect to answer. The class tests, I won't be giving one-to-one corrections. It's practically not possible for me to do that for the entire class on a regular basis. But I'll give you suggestions. You can do your self-evaluation. Okay, that is how it will be. But as I said, at the end of it, if you feel that you need my input on something, you can, of course, come and talk to me at the end of the class. That's how it's going to be. Paper 2 has to be run like this, where classroom sessions are minimal, answer writing practice is going to be more. Okay, that's when we are going to learn properly how to add value to your answer and score more marks. Okay, just the basic learning will fetch you out of 250, somewhere around 110 to 120 marks. Even without a lot of numbers, statistics, memorizing any of this. Just basic, every heading you have some knowledge of what has happened in India. You go and write the exam, you'll score 110 to 120, which is not a very great mark, but which is not a very poor mark either. In both the papers, you score about 120, you get 240, which is not a very great mark, but which is not a very poor mark either. Okay. How to make your, on that note, we'll also talk about marks that can be scored. Some say it is a low scoring paper. Can someone tell me what is a high scoring paper? Give me an example of a high scoring paper. Anthropology, mathematics, people score 330. I don't expect anyone to score unless you are really, really good in economics. Really, really good in economics, where you are already at a level where you can do research on it. You have such good understanding of the basics of the subject. Probably you could get it. Okay. In that case, you would probably not need a class from me. You would already have enough knowledge, right? But I think maybe say 280 to 300 is a reasonable target. It's something that is achievable. Okay, because I told you with a very basic kind of an effort, you can score 240. How to make your 240 into 280 or 300? If you consider 280 to be low mark and that is not good enough for you, then this may not be the subject. Because some years, the toppers in this paper, what they score itself is 270, 280 region, right? But I feel that 280 is going to put you into the rank list. If you have done well with respect to the GS papers, 280 will put you in the rank list. In that year, if the correction happens to be a little lenient with respect to economics, and that will vary from year to year. Some years, some papers, the evaluators make it very difficult. There is no one who understands this logic behind it. Some years, some paper scores a lot, some subject scores a lot. Some years, some papers are pulled out. A few years, one paper scores really well, and 1 year suddenly they bring the scoring down. No one understands the logic behind how it works. If you happen to be lucky in that particular year, you could probably place yourself in the top 10 also, if the score works to your advantage. Okay, if your papers that you really enjoy, GS as well as economics, happens to be there, it will be in the top. So I don't think if you study the subject really well, the score in optional is going to take you out of the list. You will be in the top, say 100 or somewhere in that. You'll get to have your preference pick. That is not going to be lost out because of economics. But if you are someone who's targeting, let's say 330, minimum 300 I require, I'll put in the effort, but minimum I should be assured of 300, then I don't think economics is likely. It is a lot is dependent on chance. Okay. On that note, there is a report that UPSC has published as well. It's very important for us to understand this as well. Let me see if I can get that report. You see, I've typed annual reports UPSC, and there is a 73rd, which is the most recent report that they have given. I'm opening this up. Why this report is relevant for us is this report tells the UPSC's exams that they have conducted, and they have also given a list of optional chosen by those who got selected into the services. Not the most recent one, of course, 2022-23 is what they have done. Okay, maybe I'll search. So this is distribution of candidates who appeared via optional 2021's. A little old, but this is the most recent that we have from official sources. You look at economics, let's look at that first, number 8. In that particular year, 190 students appeared in the mains examination. Those who got selected to the mains examination, 190 appeared, 25 of them got recommended in the final list, which is 13.2% in terms of the number of people who appear and who get converted. You can look at your optional of preference and see what the numbers are. The more popular one seems to be anthropology, where 1,159 people appeared, 90 got recommended, which is a success rate of 7.8%. Not making any conclusions, because as the number becomes bigger, obviously the percentage will come down. You cannot make a true comparison with different numbers, but you can make your own inferences out of it. Okay, if you keep hearing, you talk to 10 people and you find that more number of people have taken anthropology, it's because more number of people appear. Among those who selected, more number of people will get selected. Look at it, 90 people have got selected, only 25 people have got selected. So 1/4 of the people that you meet might have taken, let's say you meet not 1/4, that's not, no, it's not even very poor mathematics for me to say that, but you get the sense of what I'm trying to say. So this is 90 out of 1,159. The percentage is given over here. Let's look at some other subjects also. Geography, 66 have got selected, but out of 1,079, which is a percentage of 6.1, conversion rate of 6.1. Then you have law, which is a reasonably good number. Hindi language literature, which is a reasonably good number. Mathematics, 513 appeared, 50 got selected, 9.7 as a percentage. But management, quite a big number, 16.1, but there is a bias. Less number of people have appeared. Only 31 people have appeared. Usually when less number of people appear, there is likely to be a higher percentage. Economics also has an advantage in that sense, because 190 is comparatively low when you compare to thousands. That's why the number may be quite high. Let's say in economics itself, more number of people appear. That number is bound to come down from 13.2 to a lesser number. Okay. Take political science and international relations, 1,571, 140 have got selected, 8.9% as a conversion rate. Sociology, quite popular, 1087, 92 have got selected, 8.5. I'm not showing this to show that economics is better. I'm just showing this to show that taking economics does not put you at a disadvantage. That's all that I'm trying to convey. Obviously, these numbers can be interpreted in many ways. Obviously, when the base number itself is small, the percentage is likely to be higher. You need very big numbers for averages, law of averages to work out, for probabilities to work out. You cannot look at probabilities with small number. It is no, it doesn't make sense at all. But you are not at any disadvantage if you choose economics as an optional, provided you clear prelims. Look at the number of people writing mains with economics as an optional. That itself is a very small number. Okay, in the last 3 years, unfortunately, I have not had anyone clearing prelims itself. So how do we know conversions? You need to first clear prelims. And obviously, when the number of people who are taking a subject is more number of people would clear prelims. Okay. So in a class, if you have only, let's say 20 to 25 people, that's roughly our number today, right? In this, maybe 1 person or 2 people would clear prelims. Not pointing particularly at anyone, but that is usually the number. In a class of 200 that we have in GS classes, if there are 200 people, even that itself you will have maybe 2 or 3 people or 4 people, and most of the people who attend the class are first time participants, right? In the first time, the biggest barrier for a person writing the exam is their own lack of belief that they can clear the examination. They come into the mindset that, okay, second attempt I'll try to clear. So in that case, it becomes all the more harder, right? So the moment you clear your prelims, then you are not at any disadvantage when it comes to choosing economics as optional, provided you really like the subject. Okay, so that is I wanted to show this because I wanted to convey to you that it is not a bad choice, provided you like the subject. Okay. This is for people who are online as well, who are wondering about this. Okay. A couple of others have responded after earlier. Does economics have high overlap with GS? I think I addressed that. 125 marks worth of overlap, not a lot more. Can you suggest specific NCERTs or books that help bridge the gap from history to economics, from history background economics? We'll talk about that one-on-one if I feel it's relevant. It's very specific question, right? Malini's question was about current affairs, whether it is possible to score in economics without current affairs. I would say no. Because paper 2, 125, you cannot just give up on that. So you cannot score. You will be at a clear disadvantage if you don't focus on current affairs. Ovia, to answer your question as well, economics optional, it includes current affairs for 1/4 of the paper, what I can say. All right. Now coming to paper 1. Paper 1, we can broadly divide into, they have given it as 5 areas, but a different kind of a split. So we have microeconomics, which is given first. We have macroeconomics. They have given money theories as part of something called as money, banking and finance. But when we learn this part, the first part that is here will be a part of macroeconomics. So there is macroeconomics and monetary economics together as one part. So there is microeconomics, macro and monetary together as one. So this part and 3A, that's to be looked at together in terms of syllabus. And then we have public finance, which is the third area, which is hardly an area. We'll have one class for public finance, that's all, because there is, in terms of UPSC asking questions itself, that's an area with very, very minimal focus. You don't have to study an entire book or anything. Maybe 1 or maximum 2 questions are asked. Most years, 1 question or no questions at all. 1 is something that you can expect roughly. And there is no hard theories with respect to learning that. It's going to be a fairly easy area to cover. That's in colleges, there is a lot more focus on public finance. In this exam, it's a very low focus area. And it's not public finance of India, it's public finance series. Okay, so that's of very limited focus. Then you have international economics. So we have macro monetary, public finance, 3, 4 is international economics. So international economics itself is broadly broken into 2. One is theories with respect to trade. The other is balance of payments. Okay, trade related theories. Should there be free trade? Should there not be free trade? Should there be tariff, no tariff? Theories related to that. That's one side. And the second is trade and other flows is the balance of payments. In the balance of payments, is there balance? If there is imbalance, how to bring about balance? There are theories written with respect. Should the government intervene? Should the government not intervene? Theories based on that. So that is this part. So broken into two parts, but international economics. And the last area is growth and development, where we learn about theories of growth, theories of development, and we have environment related aspects as well. Okay, this is broadly what we have as the 5 areas. Each of these areas has one book to read. So you leave public finance out of it. So 4 areas with one book to read from each area. But even growth and development, you only have to pick and choose and learn. And some parts of it, we don't have a textbook for reference. You have to go for internet source as well. So mainly, you are going to focus on 3 textbooks for paper 1. One for microeconomics, one for macro and monetary, one for international economics. Those are the 3 areas. Public finance, there is a book, but there is, I told you, it's very limited focus area. So you don't have to focus too much on that area. Just a few topics we pick and choose, few areas we pick and choose and learn. That's all that is there. So there's hardly any book reference that is required for that. And growth and development, we do have a book reference because they have very specifically given names of theories as well. As you can see from here, there is something called as SARATH model, Lewis model. This balanced and unbalanced growth are 2 separate theories. There are names associated with that. There's Myrdal, there is Kuznets model. All these names are given, but that's all. One theory is maybe 4 or 5 pages worth of learning. So that's what you have. So there are books, not the entire book to read. We pick and choose from that and learn. It is more than public finance. In terms of exam focus also, that's an area. Plus there is this environmental area. There are a lot of questions are coming from this last one: development and environmental sustainability, renewable and non-renewable resources, environmental degradation, intergenerational equity development. So that area, we don't have any source material at all. We just have to rely on internet articles, say Economic and Political Weekly, or research papers that are published in certain universities. So those kind of editorials that appear in the newspaper, we have to compile our information based on that, just based on general reading. That's all that we can do with respect to that area. It's a very important area. These areas also, with respect to economic planning, development, and all those, has to be based on research articles. These areas where specific names are given, we have textbook references for that. But say you could say half of it textbook references there. For the remaining half, it has to be based on research papers and weeklies that we have to read and make note of. Okay, that's how it is going to be. So mainly 3 textbooks for us: microeconomics, macro monetary, and international economics. These are the 3 areas. Growth and development also, on and off book reference is what is there. So I won't really call it as a major area of book reference. Now coming to area by area. In terms of our classroom, the maximum time that we are going to be taking is for learning microeconomics. Okay. In terms of size of the subject, it's huge. In terms of time required for learning it, for those who are not already familiar with the areas, it is very time consuming. In fact, out of the total, say roughly 5 to 6 months for paper 1, paper 2 is the remaining 1 month, right? So for, say 5 to 6 months of paper 1, close to 2 months will go in microeconomics itself in the beginning, and subsequently half a month towards the end as well. So 2 to 2.5 months will go in microeconomics itself. One of the 5 subjects itself will take us that much time. But once that is done, the rest of the areas are not as time consuming. In terms of volume, it is not very high. In terms of coverage, it is not very high. Next biggest area that you could ask, I would say, is your international economics, which again, we can break it down into 2 parts and takes a bit of time. Macroeconomics is not as time consuming because there is initially one theory and then subsequently a counter to that theory and a new approach towards that, a completely third school of thought. And then we go back to why the first theory is still better, why the second theory is still better. Future economists who come and argue with respect to that. I will get into specific areas as well. Okay. So microeconomics is what we are going to start with. When we start paper 1, we don't have a choice. We have to start with that. That is where we learn all the very basic concepts itself. Since there will be a lot of people in class who don't have a BA in economics and who have just studied economics here and there, or not studied the subject at all, heard of it, or just randomly choosing, we are in our class, we are going to start from the very basics. Like the first chapter will talk about, first class will be talking about what is meant by law of demand. At that level of basic is what we are going to go into. Anyway, this paper, what the UPSC claims is, it's not master's level, it's honors level. It's a little higher than the bachelor's level, but not as high as the master's level. So that is the level. So we are expected to learn from the very basic itself. So we'll start with, you will not find it in the syllabus. There is not a lot of questions also that's going to appear from it, but the initial month is going to be entirely on two aspects of the market: demand, supply. So demand, theories related to demand. What is the concept of demand? What is meant by demand? How do we understand demand? All those things. And then supply, concepts related to supply. Okay. These are very basic, but without understanding this in its complete depth, we cannot learn anything that happens subsequently. So in the syllabus, they directly get into, look at the third line, there is something given as market structure, right? We directly get into market in the syllabus. Market is made of demand and supply. Without understanding and studying concepts related to demand and supply, we cannot understand market. So we will first learn demand, supply, then we'll get into market. Then we divide the market into different types of structures that are there. So those who are familiar, there are different types of market called as a market with perfect competition, a market where there are no one can influence that market. The market itself will decide what is happening. In an ideal kind of it's an ideal kind of a scenario. When economists theorize, they assume that this is how a market is, where no one influences that market. So that is one extreme. Then we'll go to the other extreme and say one person influences the market completely, which we refer to as monopoly. So there is, they have not explicitly given the first one, perfect competition, but this Marshallian and Walrasian approaches to price determination is what is perfect competition. So this is perfect competition. The next extreme is something called as monopoly, which again they have not given over here. But these are the two extremes that is there. There are two in-between concepts as well with respect to market. Some level of influence, greater level of influence. That is, one is monopolistic competition, which is close to the ideal, but more real world scenario. The other is what is called as duo and oligopoly. Both, this is not separate, it's two same concept itself. Both together is closer towards monopoly. Monopoly, only one entity would decide everything. In duo or oligopoly, a few entities, 2 or 3 entities would control the whole things. So there is a transition. Ideal, less than ideal, but more realistic. Then we are moving towards the worst case scenario. You could say worst case because general belief is that no interference is what is good. So we are moving towards that. So it's a gradual transition. So we talk about how do producers decide how much to produce in an economy. That is what we are going to study in microeconomics. Microeconomics is all about understanding production. Okay, but for a producer to take the decision, what consumers consume is also very, very important. This is what is going to be the crux of our learning in microeconomics. How will producers take their decision? Depending on different market structures, the logic of their decision making will differ. And their decision making will differ whether they are producing for a short period or whether they are taking decisions for the long period. So in every area, we'll do an analysis of what is the short term idea that they have, what is the long term idea that they have. Okay, in each of these areas. So the main area of microeconomics is A and C. That is what will take us close to 2 months to learn. In the subject, in this syllabus, lines A and C is what will take us close to 2 months to learn. Then we'll stop microeconomics. We will not cover B and D in the initial phase. We'll stop with A and C, and then we'll move to macroeconomics. Then we'll learn international economics, public finance, growth and development, and all these things. Once we have learned macroeconomics, that is the main area here. Once we have learned macroeconomics, we can come back to microeconomics, this part. Because what is given here is alternative distribution theories, and distribution is mainly an area of macroeconomic study. So without understanding the basic concepts of macroeconomics, we cannot understand this part of microeconomics. So we need to finish macroeconomics and then we'll come back to alternative theories. This modern welfare criteria is also more from a developmental kind of perspective. So before we learn growth and development, we'll be covering this area as well. Modern welfare criteria, a few concepts, names of economists are mentioned over there. So we'll cover that aspect as well. And there is one more area we'll be learning, which is not mentioned over here, but from which questions are asked almost on a regular basis, which is in the production process, what we talk about here, price determination is given, right? This is price of the end product that is getting produced. Let's say a pen is produced. How is the price of this pen determined? But in producing this pen, there are what you call as factors of production as well, right? The factors of production themselves have a price. Like if I'm working here, I need to be paid a wage. How is my wage determined? This building owner needs a rent. How is that rent determined? An entrepreneur wants a profit. How is that profit level determined? The money lender needs interest. How is that interest rate determined? There are theories with respect to that. It's not given in the syllabus, but questions are asked from that area. So we'll be learning theories related to wage determination, interest determination, rent determination, and profit determination as well. 4 areas of learning as well. So all that is in microeconomics. It's a very vast area to learn. From among the 5 areas, that is the biggest area. So 2 months in the beginning, roughly half a month towards the end is something that we require for covering that part. Okay, so microeconomics is the biggest area. Other areas don't take as much time. So in macroeconomics, what we have are mainly 3 schools of thought. Okay, conventionally they say 2, but because I'm including monetary also inside it, 3 schools of thought. One is what is called as the classical school of thought. A few economists who originally believed what is the basis of how production takes place and how a market works and all those things, but not at a micro individual firm level. In terms of one product is not what they're talking. In microeconomics, it's all about how to produce one product. In macroeconomics, the discussion would be at a much greater level, which would be for the economy as a whole, how are decisions taken? How are production decisions taken? So that is what would be the focus of macroeconomics. There is a classical view, and if you read economic history in general, or if you just read up a little bit about it, you'll notice that these changes that happened, okay, especially in macroeconomics, the changes have been necessitated by events that have actually taken place in the world. So till there was a phenomenon called as, the First World War happened, right? And somewhere around that period, there was also something called as the Great Depression that happened in America. Those who have read a little bit or those who are aware of it might know that. That Great Depression completely threw into chaos the economic philosophy that existed till that point of time. Because there was a belief that existed in economics that this is what is the right approach. That approach was not working out at all. So there was an economist who came and said, no, this view was wrong. I knew it all along, but no one listened to me. But this is my view. And that is a Keynesian view. Keynes, John Maynard Keynes is the name of the economist. He gave a view, and that view is different from the previous view. Okay, some key areas there is differences, and that is the second school of thought. There is a classical school of thought, and there is a Keynes school of thought. And then subsequently, when other areas of discussion came about, subsequent after the Second World War, a concept of money's significance came into the picture. That's where a monetary theory came into existence. Okay, the economists called as Friedman and a few other people related to it, they came with a monetary school of thought. Money is the driving force behind entire production activity, not what they originally theorized about. I'm not getting into the theory itself, but that's what it is. And then subsequently, the original school of thought made a comeback, and there were people who argue that no, that school of thought was correct all along. You misunderstood that theory and you did not apply its principles properly. So a new version of the classical theory came, and a new version of the Keynesian theory as well came. So you will have new classical and new Keynesian. So there is new classical, new Keynesian is not mentioned over here, but that is how it is. So there is classical, Keynesian, monetary, new classical, new Keynesian. This is the order in which. So 5 schools of thought, you could say, 3 main and 2 corrections to pre-existing schools of thought. This is all that we have in macro and monetary. So in macro itself, the syllabus we'll have to break down. Classical Keynesian we have to learn. Then we'll go to monetary theory, and then we'll come back to new classical, new Keynesian. That's how we have to learn. That's order. Syllabus is given in a sort of haphazard manner. There itself we saw, right? A and C will cover. A should be first, C should be second, then comes modern criteria and then alternative, but they've mixed it all. We learn it in the appropriate order. Okay, so this is the second part that we'll be covering, macroeconomics. Okay, in terms of class, public finance we could cover anytime. It will be more like a gap filler. It's not related to any other concept, so we can just like that take that up any day, any one day and finish it. Then we have international economics, which is the next area. As I already mentioned, there are broadly 2 broad areas into which it is divided. Theories of trade. Should there be any restrictions to trade or should there not be? Okay, we can actually correlate it to a lot to current affairs. Now Trump is of the belief, not just Trump, it sort of, you could say, started with the Britain deciding to leave European Union, Brexit. You're all familiar with that. A few years back it happened, right? That was an example of breakup of the concept of free trade. Okay, some kind of a restriction they wanted to have in their country. That, and subsequently year after year we are seeing that more and more countries are trying to prevent others from freely entering. So there is a restriction that's coming in. So which makes us wonder, so is free trade bad or is free trade good? So there were theories which were made. Originally the belief was that no free trade should be there. previously. That was a belief that was called as mercantilism. I should look at what is good for me, and I can only make gains by causing loss to you. Because I can gain, for me to gain, you have to lose. So that was the philosophy that was there. That philosophy is completely changed by the contributions primarily of a person called as Adam Smith and subsequent followers called as Ricardo and a few other economists who were along the same school of thought, who believe that trade can be mutually beneficial. I can gain, you can gain, both can mutually become better by involving in the concept of unrestricted trade, and that transition and theories related to that. Towards the end, we'll discuss then how come some groups alone want to enjoy the benefits of free trade by excluding others. So trade union formation or tariffs that are imposed on some countries, we'll talk about those things, and that will end the discussion about trade theories. So that is what we have. Old and new theories of international trade, comparative advantage. Then you have new theories are there, they have not specifically mentioned it, and forms of protection, tariff and trade. That is one part. A and B together is one part. Then you have C, which is balance of payments adjustments. What are the various logics associated with it? BOP is a new area entirely. So in BOP, we have the current account, capital account, the flows that happen. Inside the current account, what are the components? Inside the capital account, what are the components? What is balancing? What is imbalance? If the imbalance is there, how is it addressed? There are certain models which are, or certain theories which says that this is how you can arrive at the balance. So that is what we will be learning in that part. Okay. This is also a little, maybe after micro, the more time consuming aspect is this. And then we have macro and monetary as other area. Then we have growth and development, which will not take a lot of time, because as I told you itself, the number of theories that we are going to be discussing in class is something like 10 or 11, 10 and 12 theories maybe. At most, maybe 15 theories that we'll be covering. 15 theories will take us hardly maybe 4 or 5 classes. That's all. 4-hour classes is what we have, no 9 to 1. So it will take us maybe 4 classes, which is roughly 2 weeks. That's all that is required to cover. That's a fairly small part, but there is a lot of other self-learning areas that I'll guide you in that, but there's a lot of learning. It's just reading articles and making interpretations out of it. That is there with respect to that. Okay. So this is what we have. Public finance I already covered. So this part is quite time consuming, and the classes itself will be held almost entirely on weekends. But if there is a weekend that we miss out due to some national holiday or something of that sort, so some weekend we completely lose, or I happen to be traveling on work and as a result I'm not able to have class during a particular weekend, then alone as compensation we'll try to have classes during weekdays. I think the general preference for the institute itself is to have a class from 2:30 to 5. So that might be the time when we have, because 5:30 to 8 there will be people who have GS classes. 8 to 1:30 is when there will be GS classes. So 2:30 to 5 might be the time during the weekdays if we have class. And if we miss one weekend class, to compensate that, we'll have maybe 2 days of weekday classes just for that. So there will be some proportion to it. We might have weekday classes just to compensate for any missed out classes. That's all. The batch is going to be mainly weekend batch. Okay. And the timeline that we expect is, last year I started in early October, and we ended only around April, towards the end of April. So it's too much of time. That's why this year we are starting much earlier. So July we are starting, even if we take it slow a little bit. Every year we take it slow in the beginning. So that's not going to especially slow us down this year, because we take it slow. So July, August, September, October, November, December, at most January. So towards the end of January is when the longest maximum period that we expect to take to finish this. That it will take that much time. I'm not going to give any false commitment saying that we'll finish before that. But there is another thing which influences the time taken in class. I have finished the subject in 6 months. I have finished the subject in 7 months also. Why the difference is classroom participation. In the classroom, if you are very active, you are asking questions, it will obviously slow down the pace at which we are going. But that is something that I really enjoy doing. So from my perspective, taking 7 months is not a bad thing if it means there is a lot of interaction that's going on. There's another thing. If you 6 months might take in 2 scenarios. Either you are not participative at all, in which case I won't know whether you are really involved in the process, but the class will keep on going. We'll finish it in 6 months. Or you're really good at understanding things, then also there is not a lot of doubt clearance that will come up. So then also it might end in 6 months. So 6 to 7 is what I give as a timeline. There is no hard and fast exact timing of classes. I do have a split of how many hours I require per topic and all those things. I'll share that with you as well when we actually start the classes, maybe a week or 2 down the line. I'll share that with you. Once we stay, the batch has sort of organized itself and we say this is the final set of students that we have. Once we decide that, I'll share with you a timeline, an expected timeline. When will we end micro? When are we expected to? So that you can also keep track of progress. So we'll do that. But it's going to be very difficult to stick exactly to that because classroom interactions might go back and forth. Technical issues might pop up. Those kind of things can happen from time to time. So this is a general overview of the class itself. Okay. If you have any questions, you can ask me based on what I have discussed so far. I'll take up a couple of things that have come up online as well. First, I'll do that. Then you can ask your questions. And then after that, we'll take a look at the previous year question paper that I told you as well. Let me just look at some questions that have come up here. How much time should a beginner from non-economics background ideally give per day to complete the optional before mains? Sir, are people taking economics as optional finding it difficult to clear prelims itself because there is not much of an overlap with GS? I am from engineering background, doing my prep alongside work, very new to economics. Is economics an optional considerable? I was also thinking of sociology. I'm not considering electrical engineering, which is my graduation subject, due to widespread and intensity of the syllabus. Can you please give me your suggestion on the same, along with pros and cons with respect to smart trip? Okay. So 3 questions. How much time would you require to prepare? If you ask me this question with respect to GS, if you ask me this question with respect to optional, my answer is all going to be the same. It is very subjective. Okay, there are people who study for 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day. Some people who study only 6 hours a day. You talk to aspirants who have cleared, who have come in the top. There is no standard answer to this. What you should keep as a target is, you should not target time per day ever. You should never target amount of time to study per day. Okay, to bring about discipline in life, you can do that. This much time I'll dedicate towards this. That for you can do that. But if you're actually preparing for the examination, your target should be content of study. You have this much topic to cover. If it requires you to study for 8 hours, you have to study for 8 hours. If 4 hours is enough to complete that, 4 hours is what you need to study. So it doesn't matter whether you are someone with economics background or no economics background, like he's mentioning. Even for people with no economics background, the time factor will only be something that is in the initial days, where you are getting introduced to the very basic concepts of demand and supply and all those things. Once you get a hang of it, the initial month, once you get a hang of the subject, then you will be almost on par with anyone else who's there, because it's all going to be like we discussed in the previous topic. This is how it is, and it's going to be fairly straightforward as a subject. So time is very subjective, so I cannot comment on the time, how many hours a day you have to dedicate. I can't comment on it, but topic wise, something you can keep some kind of a topic. So on a particular day, you have to finish this topic. So that's something that you will have to create on your own. With respect to certain books that we follow, you can even keep a count of these many pages I'll complete per day. Pages would be equal to the topics that you have. So you can do something like that. Okay. If you want very specific information on this, Eros, assuming that is your name, you can text me. I'll share my Telegram ID at the end of the session. You can text me individually with respect to your specific queries with timing and management of time and all those things. I'll answer you with respect to that. Second, Varun has a very interesting interpretation of what I said. There are people taking economics as an optional, finding it difficult to clear prelims itself because there is not much of an overlap with GS. Absolutely not true. There's hardly any optional subject which has an overlap when it comes to prelims preparation. Those who say about overlap itself, they are, I'm assuming, talking about mains preparation more than the prelims preparation itself. It's not that people with economics as an optional struggle to clear prelims. In general, people struggle to clear prelims. How many people apply for the prelims examination? Roughly 10 lakh. How many people clear the prelims examination? Roughly 10,000. So look at the proportion. What percentage? 1%. You meet 100 people, 1 people clear. You have a classroom of 200, roughly 2 people from that class are going to clear the prelims. Prelims, I'm not talking final list. Finalists, we only are going to have 1,000 people, which is an even lesser percentage, right? So that's 1%, this is 0.1%. Okay, you meet 1,000 people, 1% from that would clear the examination. So the number is low when it comes to economics who are clearing the prelims, because in general, the number of people who choose economics itself is lesser. Let's say we have a class of 100, I can say with certainty that at least 1 or 2 people from the class will clear the prelims examination. I can say that. But if the class size itself, let's say 20 or 25, the odds are that once in 3 years, we might have a person who clears the prelims examination. 25, 25, 25. Across timeline, we can say, but as I told you already, these average concepts don't work like that. Maybe there is a year in which out of 25, 5 people clear also. That can also happen, right? So I'm just saying, it's not something directly to do with economics as an optional. In general, preparing for UPSC is a tough thing. And especially a lot of people prepare for UPSC along with something else like college, going to college, or doing their masters, or maybe working. Some people would be working simultaneously and doing. And those who are completely into the preparation itself, what I told you, the biggest barrier for people to clear prelims is not the exam. The biggest barrier is lack of self-belief that you can clear. People come in with the mindset that first attempt is trial attempt. Okay, that itself is the biggest barrier for clearing the examination. So if you are attending class this year and you don't believe that you can clear, obviously the number of people who are clear is going to be low. I'm sure you talk to most optional faculty, they'll say very similar things to what I say. From that year's batch, they would have very limited people who are writing the examination because of the general lack of belief with respect to their ability to clear the examination. So that is that one. And Anisha's question is with respect to engineering. Is it a viable optional? See, a lot of people from this year, we have actually very limited number of people, but quite a lot of engineering people actually opt for economics as an optional. I don't really know why, but that has been a trend that we have observed in the past as well. There is a general or inclination for people with engineering as optional to be present in economics, engineering as background, to be present in economics optional classes, to the extent that there was a year where majority was engineering background. Very less people with economics as graduation or BCom as graduation. We have had times like that also. So because for engineers, most subject is new. For those who have done engineering, any subject is like a new subject. Geography is going to be new, sociology is going to be new, political science is going to be new. Economics, they look at as more of a logical subject, and engineering being a science kind of a subject. There are some colleges which offer economics as a BSc program and MSc program itself rather than MA and BA. So there is some kind of a closeness with science in the sense that this paper is very, very mathematical. Paper 1 is very, very mathematical in nature. That could be a reason. So in that sense, if you are someone who's good at understanding logic, mathematical logic, you are going to find it easier to understand economics as a subject. Okay, so that is the starting point. But Anisha, as I said, I'll share my Telegram ID with you. Very specific queries, I'll address it in one-on-one conversations with you, if your specific case. Okay, but extending on the answer that I just gave about the subject being a mathematical subject, when I say the subject is mathematical, I don't mean numerical mathematics. So the questions are not going to be mathematical problems with mathematical answers. That is not how it's going to be. Of late, UPSC is asking one question of, let's say, 20 marks maximum out of 250, which has numerical mathematics as a question. That is a question that you can actually leave in choice as well. In the sense, you can choose not to prepare that and still you can completely attend the full paper itself, right? When I say it's a mathematical subject, I mean the graphical side of it. Graph is also mathematics, right? You have learned graph and mathematics only. This entire subject is graphical in nature. Every concept that is explained is graphically explained. Every single thing that you are going to learn in paper 1 has a graph associated with it. Okay, so especially microeconomics, you draw a graph, you understand the graph, there is nothing else in the answer. The graph is self-explanatory. That is not always the case in macroeconomics. And if you look at it, then growth and development is also a macroeconomic study. So macroeconomics, monetary, growth and development, all these things, the graph is going to be minimal. Interpretation of the graph is going to be greater. But then even then there is a graph. So if you consider graph to be mathematics, then obviously it is mathematics. And if you are good at graphs, then economics is a subject that you will find very interesting, and you will really get hooked on to the subject, and it will not be a lot of pain to understand the subject. The only challenge would be there are so many graphs that differentiating one graph from the other might be a challenge. What is the difference between this graph and that graph? That is going to be a challenge. But it's a graphical subject. Everything explained graphically. Okay, every single topic we'll have a graph to explain. So if you are good with graphs, understanding graphs, interpreting graphs, then this is a subject that you can seriously consider taking. Okay, so that is to answer Anisha and the others who were there in class. Okay, any specific questions from your end in addition to what? Sources for paper 2. I'll answer for both. Okay, so since I started my discussion, syllabus discussion with paper 2, I'll address paper 2. Two main books for reference for the pre-independence period. There is an author called as Tirthankar Roy. Who has written a book called as Economic History of India. So it looks something like this. 1857 to 1947. The Economic History of India. So this is a book. I think there is another version of this book as well. This one. This is also Tirthankar Roy. Same book only, I think, but there is some change in. Okay, one is 3rd edition, one is 4th edition probably. So there is some page differences, page number differences. Not a lot. So same thing. Okay. So some places you will find the book costing 4,000, 5,000 and all those. Don't fall for it. There are cheaper versions of that book available. So it's hardbound versus paperback and all those things. So there is a cheap version of that book available, say 400 to 500 rupees. That is a cheaper version. Okay, so you will find that available. So this is the book for reference for pre-independence. With respect to post-independence, I would suggest going for a book by an author called as Uma Kapila. That's my personal suggestion, but there are other options also. There is a book written by authors called as Dutt and Sundaram, Mishra and Puri. These are also suggestions that are there. But my personal preference is because of how the book is presented. The book name is Indian Economy, Performance and Policies. There is a book that she has written also called as Indian Economy Since Independence. That's a much bigger book. I would say that is not necessary for our optional preparation. A smaller version of this is the 33rd edition. This is not what I want you to buy or what I want you to look at. So it is this book. So I think it has now reached the 23rd edition. Indian Economy, Performance and Policies. That is the name of the book. Okay. So this is the post-independence, pre-liberalization and post-liberalization as well. So whatever static information that you need, these are the two books for reference. For anything else, one more book of reference is Economic Survey itself. That is downloadable from the budget website. Economic Survey. Okay. Everything else has to be based on internet searches and learning. So this is for paper 2. Now coming to paper 1 itself. For microeconomics, the book that we are going to follow is one by an author called as H.L. Ahuja. Ahuja has written probably 10 different books on microeconomics, so you have to be careful which one you buy. The book that we are looking for is Modern Microeconomics, Theory and Applications by H.L. Ahuja. I think this is the most recent version of it. 19th edition probably. Theory and Applications. Okay, he has also written something called as Principles of Microeconomics, not that. Advanced Economic Theory, 21st edition, not that. Okay, so it is my Modern Microeconomics, Theory and Applications. Usually this is the cover of the book, yellow cover. When they change editions, they usually change the book cover as well. So this is the edition. Why we follow an Indian author for this is because UPSC seems to almost ask questions directly from this book. It seems to be like that. Headings that he has given in the book are reflected as it is in the examination. So our class is also going to be run based on this. With respect to macroeconomics, again, we are going to rely on Ahuja. Sorry. Macroeconomics Ahuja. The book that we are going to be following is Macroeconomics Theory and Policy. Okay. Macroeconomics Theory and Policy. Monetary is also covered inside it. Okay, macro and monetary. International economics, we are going to go against general norms, and there is a book written by an author called as Mannur, H.G. Mannur, not very commonly found, but this book helps in learning the concepts in a better flow. Obviously, those who have studied anything to do with international economics would have heard of what is generally considered to be the Bible of international economics by an author called as Dominic Salvatore. His book is considered to be like the reference for any international economic theory, but the book that we are going to follow for the sake of our syllabus coverage, what aligns better with that is this book, H.G. Mannur, International Economics. This is what we are going to be following. It's a book filled with typo errors. So I will make error corrections in class itself. And this is what we are going to be using inside the class. So these are the main books that we follow, right? With respect to public finance, there is a book by H.L. Bhatia. I think, public finance. But I told you that's a book that you need not buy, because we are going to pick and choose certain areas and learn from that. So H.L. Bhatia, Public Finance. Just as a reference, if you have an online version of it, you can refer to it. I think most of these books you can buy an ebook from Google as well. If you are someone who prefers going for marking online and all those things, that's an option that you have. So that is with respect to public finance. Sorry? Okay. Yeah, sure. Yeah, welcome. Growth and development. We have again an Indian author called as Jingan that we follow. But in class, it's mostly going to be, I won't be using, for all other subjects, I'll be following a book. But for this subject, I'll just be teaching theories without book as a reference. So you can rely on any book that you would like. But other subjects, the class itself would run based on that particular textbook. So this is one book that you have as a choice. Okay. The book appears like this: The Economics of Development and Planning by M.L. Jingan. Personally, I'm not a big fan of this author because of how he writes, the way he writes. Ahuja also, I have my own issues, but Jingan, I have more issues than I have with Ahuja. But who am I to have issues with them? I'll tell you what are the advantages and disadvantages of all of these books. And I'll also, so these are the books for reference for paper 1. I think I've covered all the subjects that is there. Although we'll be using these books in class, there is no compulsion that you have to use these books for your studies. If you have already learned your bachelor's or for master's, you have used some other book and you feel comfortable learning the same topic from that book, what I would suggest to you is follow the index of this book and learn the topics from your book of preference. If you have class notes from college, which you feel is sufficient for you to cover that area, and I will teach every relevant concept in class, so you can check with your other book or class notes whether all those topics are covered in your source material as well. If you feel that all the areas are covered, there is no necessity for you to follow the book that I am following in class. This is just for convenience of tracking the class. If you have a preference for any other book, be it micro, macro, international, anything, feel free to follow that. Okay, it's not compulsory that you have to study from a particular book. You need to know concepts, that's all. It's economics. It was not created by these authors. They have just written a book about it. There are definitely better books than these in terms of quality of concepts, conveying the concepts. But for UPSC exam preparation, it's generally believed in terms of the subtopics that are there and focus areas and all those things. These Indian authors' books tend to be a little better in terms of preparation. You can do one thing as well. All the basic concepts you can learn from, if you have other book of preference, you can learn from that. and you can come to fill in the gaps from these books. So buying these books, that's why I even suggested the online version, PDF version or ebook version of it, because if you already have a core book which is in hard copy format, you can follow that. You can use these books as PDF copies to fill in, or ebooks to fill in on certain areas. Or if this is the book that you're going to keep as your primary reference, then definitely get a hard copy, because soft copy, especially the legal versions of it, like ebooks, does not allow you to mark things properly, highlight things properly. So having a physical book always helps. Okay. Do not be in a hurry to buy books. First 2 months, we are going to be focusing only on microeconomics and a bit of paper too, right? So those are the only books that you need to first concern yourself with. Get introduced to the subject a little bit, get familiar with the author, then you can consider buying subsequent books at a later date. You can always get in touch with me at that point of time before you actually go for the purchase. Okay. Now I'll tell you what are the issues that I have with this book. Ahuja takes 10 pages to explain what could be explained in 2 pages. Okay. The disadvantage of that is you'll never feel like you have completed the book. It will drag on and on and on. By the time you reach the 4th page, didn't you just say this in the previous page? That's the feeling that you will get. Okay. But there is a good side to this as well. Those who are not very strong with your fundamentals, repeated reading of that will, second time when you read the same thing, you'll be, yeah, it makes sense. Previously, I didn't quite understand it. Now I understand. Same thing he'll explain in different words. It's not a repetition of words. It's a repetition of concept. So that will probably help drill it into your mind a little better. So for first time learners, or for those who are not very sure about the concept, even if you have learned BA in economics, then Ahuja can be very, very helpful. But don't focus too much or get stuck in too much on one page. Sometimes what you don't understand in one page, the 4th page will give you clarity on that. Okay, the volume of the book is going to be the biggest challenge. The book itself is close to 900 pages big. I can even show you the book. I have a version of the book that I use to teach in class. So this is Modern Microeconomics. The last page, 957 pages long. If you buy the physical copy also, it's going to be the same size, of which the first 100 pages we are not going to touch upon at all. We are going to start from chapter 7, which is 119th page is where we start from. So treat it as a 850 page book. It could easily be compressed to a 500 page book. Fairly easily. When I said 10 pages, 2 pages is a bit of an exaggeration. Maybe 850 pages can be compressed to 500 pages and the concepts can be conveyed as well, right? So in a way, note making becomes a mandate, because you cannot keep repeatedly reading the same dragged on concept. So you can do one of 2 things. Either you can start making notes and have your own version of this, or you can, not the first time, second or third time you are reading the book, you can underline what is relevant to you, so that revision becomes much easier. In that sense also, Ahuja is very, very good, because everything that is important about a topic, Ahuja gives in italics. So you don't have to go looking for what is the important point. The important point is already given in italics by the author itself. So that is a very good thing about the book as well. So that is something with respect to Ahuja. Be it micro, macro, in both the cases, this is the problem that is there. With Jingan, what should be explained in 5 pages, he explains in 1 page. That's the problem that I have with Jingan. You read it, you're like, I don't understand what you're trying to say through what you have written. Then you have to go and do some research work at the back end, and then you're like, oh, this is the reason why you have come to this conclusion. So that should have been explained there, but the assumption is that you already know it and then they just give it in 1 line. Because of this, this is the conclusion. Why is that? That is not explained. So it's like 2 extreme kind of problems. One person writes too much, one person writes too little. That's the problem. In between, in terms of explanation, comes Mannur. Very good explanation, very succinct and to the point. That's all okay. Full of typing errors. Last updated in 1980 or something. Okay, so maybe maybe I have the book. I'll show you. So this is Mannur. Look at the number of. I just randomly opened a page. Look at the number of corrections that are there. Everything that I've highlighted in is all corrections. And most pages you go to, there will be corrections. First page, there is correction. Okay, so there are some big changes that are there. Fairly small book. It's about 336 pages, but small book. This is the length of the book. This is so small book. you won't find it very difficult to cover it. The biggest challenge is going to be the number of errors that is there per page. You go to the very first chapter itself, very first chapter, there are errors. All that my marked in red there is all error. So these kind of errors, but to help you out, I'll make the corrections then and there in class itself. So that won't be, you can make the corrections in the notebook. Once you get the corrections, then it is not as much of a challenge. And I feel it's a good book to learn, at least for the first time. If you are getting introduced to the subject of international economics, for some people, Salvatore might be a little bit of a tough nut to crack. So you can start with this. Once you get the concept straight, you can move to Salvatore if necessary subsequently. But is it necessary? I would say no. Can you write the exam with just this book? Yes, you can write this exam with just Mannur, international economics. You don't necessarily need to read Salvatore. But if you feel that, okay, Salvatore, reading Salvatore is what will give me completion. And there are sometimes questions that are asked that you will not find in this book. But there are also questions that they ask in the exam which you will not find in Salvatore. Which is why this is not a bad book to follow as well, in spite of all its errors that is there. I'll also show you Salvatore, how that looks like, the cover page of Salvatore. There is an Indian adaptation as well. Don't go for that. Go for the standard. This is the book, Dominic Salvatore, International Economics, Trade and Finance. This is the book. Okay. So in terms of our class, what I would suggest is stick to Mannur to begin with. Learn the basic, understand international economics, then go to Salvatore. That might come in handy. So if you choose not to buy Mannur also, it's fine. If you are only listening to class and then later you are going to do your own preparation, you can choose to skip Mannur as a book for your study. You can just attend class based on that. You can probably get a downloaded version of it from somewhere, and then you can directly buy this as the reference book. That's a call that you have to take. You can come talk to me before you take that call. If you need some clarity from my end, I can give you that clarity. A comparative analysis between the two books, if you want, I can do with respect to that. Microeconomics, macroeconomics, I would say stick to Ahuja itself. If you don't have a better book that you already have a preference for, like I told you in the beginning, your bachelor's, master's, if you have studied some book, you prefer that. Except for that, stick to those two. For those two subjects, stick to Ahuja itself. Okay. All right. So that is about the textbook itself. Any further questions before I go to the question paper, previous question paper? Any questions you can ask? Any further questions? There's something that came. Sir, are there any books which can be also helpful for MA Economics with Civil Services if I pursue it? All of these can be helpful in establishing your concepts. But those who are interested in MA, I think books that are published by IGNO has an MA concept which offers Indira Gandhi National Open University. Their paper 2 books, Indian economy books, are very useful for our Indian economy as well as for that. But then that's a separate MA course itself. So there is nothing which is going to prepare you. All the books that we are going to is going to prepare you for MA, because MA requires a basic understanding of the subject itself plus a lot of mathematics. Do NCERT books help in this, sir? NCERT books, not really. Everything that is there in NCERT will anyway be covering as first time learning in class itself. Your NCERT that you are referring to is introductory micro and introductory macroeconomics from 12th standard and Indian economic development in 11th standard. Those concepts will anyway be covered in class. So reading that is not going to be useless, but reading that is not necessary also. If you want to get a head start just to get some basic concepts in place, if you don't know the basic concepts, then you can read the book. But reading that is not compulsory. The class will take care of it. Okay. Sir, class notes and important books are enough for the 375 marks, which you said a static part, and also for growth and development. Is there any compilation that will be provided by the academy which will not miss out? For paper 2, we'll provide a compilation, a printed book that is already there with pre-independence, post-independence, post-liberalization also. There is a compilation that is there. That can be a good starting point, but that cannot be the final point that is there. So that book can be a good starting point. So actually a very good starting point for those who require it. So paper 2 will provide a material, online, offline, whoever is joining, you'll get the material. For growth and development, class notes would be provided, plus other things. There is no institute compilations that will be there. because it's a current affairs area, right? We cannot have a static notes with respect to that. Newer theories get written, newer research papers get written, that becomes of significance. Newer editorials are written, that becomes relevant. So that is how we have to go with respect to that. So Tirumangai, to answer specifically for growth and development, will there be any compilations? No. Other than the class notes, no. Are books and class notes sufficient? Yes, it's sufficient. Okay. So no further questions. I'll quickly run through a question paper as well. Yeah. Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
That should be also more like a simple, more understandable.
Are you asking about economics paper 2? Optional paper 2? Okay, so okay. Paper 1, there is not an overlap with the GS, so there is no comparison at all.
Can I use my master's level notes or something to? It should be more like what the answer requires, so that it should fit me more.
Okay, so adding mathematics to your numerical mathematics to your answer is not going to fetch you more marks in UPSC exam. So when you say you're adding your MA level knowledge, if it is numerical mathematics that you're going to add, that is not going to add marks. Conceptual understanding is what is important. I think there isn't a lot of scope to add to what is already there in the book when it comes to paper 1, which is why when you ask that question with respect to paper 1, I'm not sure how. If you can show me a demo of 2 answers, one which you write in a more generic manner, one where you have the MA input, I can give you a more concrete answer. You take one question, write 2 versions of the answer, I can give you which is better. That's a very one-to-one specific thing. Okay. Now coming to paper 2 and GS, again relevant for people who look at economics or who consider optional overlap with the GS as a key factor, not just in economics, in every subject this is there. One problem which often people who choose a particular optional have in the respective GS paper is that people with economics as optional sometimes tend to score low in GS3. People with geography as optional tend to score low in paper 1, GS1. Okay, the reason is because in GS paper, people might end up putting all their technical knowledge inside. You have to remember that the GS paper is corrected by generalists. It may not be an economics professor who corrects GS3. It will be a generalist who corrects it because the paper itself is general studies paper. So you should not put any economics lingo that is not there in a newspaper. General studies, your main source is newspaper itself. Any term that you will not come across on a regular basis in the newspaper, you should not put it in your GS paper because it's a generalist who's going to correct it. They are going to primarily be newspaper readers who know economics from newspaper reading. Okay, so in that sense, you should keep it very, very generic when it comes to GS3 economics paper. You should not use your economic knowledge inside it. You should answer it like a GS aspirant, not like an economics optional aspirant. However, the same question that they ask in GS3, if they ask in optional paper 2, you have to answer it very differently. You have to bring in economic logic inside it. You have to substantiate it with even more specific data if you can, or some economics paper 1 theory you can quote as a reference. That you can do. So there is a growth and development theory, which according to this author, this is what it says, that is applicable in the Indian economy. In this context, it is applicable here, or as per this author's theory, this is something that the government can do as an alternative. So there you can show your knowledge to gain more marks. So your economics paper 2 can be technical in the sense in terms of making references to economic theories. That you should never do in your GS papers. That is not going to add marks. In fact, it might reduce marks because they might look at it and find it irrelevant. And if it's irrelevant, they'll reduce marks. Same problem is there with political science optional students, geography optional students. When they get too technical in their GS answers, they tend to lose marks. So the general papers should be answered generally. The specific papers, optional is a specific paper, should be answered like an economics graduate. Your answer should give a feeling to the evaluator that you know the subject. Your depth of knowledge should be conveyed in optional paper. There should be no holding back. But how you convey that, I told you, the numerical mathematics versus the conceptual explanation, that has to be very, very conceptual oriented. Optional paper is concept oriented. not numerical explanations, not derivations and derivatives and integration, all those things. Unless the concept itself is explained that way, that is not relevant for our examination. Okay. All right. Any further questions? Okay, I'll quickly show the question paper, and then those who want to leave can leave, and then anyone who wants to interact with me after that can have an interaction with me. Sanjay, பாரு சேர்ல இருந்து விழுந்துருச்சு. வா. Paper 2 first. 2024 paper. Mention the items of economic drain from India as conceived by Dadabhai Naoroji. Did we see it in the syllabus? Drain theory. Explicitly it was there. That is what it is. Discuss why the railway system developed by East India Company went against Indian interest. They have specifically given transport, railways. That's what it is. Discuss why laissez-faire was not good for India during the pre-independence India. Exact word is there in the syllabus. That's what they have asked. Already 30 marks worth of pre-independence has come. Describe why farmers derived little benefits from commercialization of agriculture in pre-independence India. How did it not benefit Indian farmers? So that is the fourth one. And fifth one, what are the implications of PM Kisan Samman Nidhi scheme? When was Kisan Samman Nidhi introduced? Say 5 years back. That 12,000 rupees, no, 6,000 rupees per year, no? That scheme where they are given a cash transfer. It's a very recent scheme. Okay. So 1, 2, 3, 4 were all pre-independence. Fifth one was post-independence, right? Post-liberalization also. Actually, in the past, there have been times when UPSC has followed a clear structure where they say, have all of you seen the question paper previously? Seen a question paper previously? Optional question paper? Okay. For those who have not, let me just run through it, okay? The entire question paper is divided into 2 sections. Section A, Section B. Each section has 4 questions. Total 8 questions. 4 plus 4, total 8 questions. Each section has 4 questions. So total is 8 questions. Each question carries 50 marks. 50. So 8 into 50 is 400 marks. Out of the 400, you have to answer for 250. So you have choice. Unlike in GS papers where there is no choice, compulsorily every question you have to attempt, here you have choice. However, here comes the tricky part. Now, this 8 questions is not 8 single questions. It's 8 question numbers. Question number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Of that, one itself in this case has 5, 10 marks. Where if you choose one, in this case, also another point here is question number 1 and question number 5. Section A has 4 questions, right? So question number 1, and in section B, the first question is question number 5. 5 10-mark questions. You cannot leave it. You must compulsorily attempt it. So question number 1 and question number 5 are compulsory. Okay. Then, which means that how many questions do you have to attempt out of 8? 5. 5 into 50. 5 is what you have to attempt. 2, you don't have a choice in. The remaining 3, you can choose from section A and section B combined, where at least one more question should be chosen from each section. So from every section, you have to answer minimum 2 questions. Of that, question number 1 and question number 5 are compulsory, and total you have to answer 5 questions out of 8. Once you see it a couple of times, it won't be very challenging to understand this. So question number 1 in this case, and they used to follow a trend where section A was entirely pre-independence and pre-liberalization, and section B was entirely post-liberalization, but they are not following that every year. Some years they follow that, some years they don't follow that structure. So we can't go with the assumption that they might follow it. So here, first 4 questions were all pre-independence. 5th question is post-liberalization. Then 2. If you choose 2, you have to attempt ABC, all 3. So 2, 3 and 4 are all 3 questions of, again, total 50 marks. 20, 15 and 15 is usually the pattern. So one question is 2A. What schemes are launched by the government to deal with the problem of unemployment in India? Why the problem still persists? What are the schemes that they are asking? They're not asking about pre-liberalization. They're talking in general. You can write from anywhere after independence. Okay, it's across the spectrum. Pre-liberalization, post-liberalization, you can write in a broad scale. Why does the problem still persist means as of today, why does it continue to exist? Why the Mahalanobis strategy of development was abandoned? What were its inadequacies? Mahalanobis model, they can ask a question. I said, because we actually did it. Why was it abandoned? What were the inadequacies? It's a pre-liberalization question. Okay. Explain the problems faced by the jute industry during pre-independence India. Why the problem aggravated after partition of the country. Now this is 15. Already we had 40 marks worth of pre-liberalization. This is another 15. So that's 55 marks worth of questions. Highlight the role of MSMEs in Indian economy. What steps have been taken by the government to enhance its contribution? Current, post-liberalization question. Describe the trend in the growth rate of national income in India from 1950 to 1980 and its impact on poverty. Okay. We had a specific heading in the syllabus, no? National income, trends, poverty, trends. I told you trends 50 to 60, 60 to 70, 70 to 80, 80 to 90, or you can split it as 50 to 65, 65 to 80. Then 80 to 90 and post 90. So you can answer this in either way. Break it down into 50 to 65, 65 to 80, 15 years, or you can break it into 50 to 60, 60 to 70, 70 to 80, 80 to 90. In this case, not 90, till 80 only, 3 decades. Okay. You can use either of these approaches to answer this question. Okay. Describe the rate of growth and its impact on poverty. They are not even asking what caused it and all those things. It's a very, and in UPSC, one difference from your college answers, those who have just out of college, is that in college, when they ask a question about one area, you'll write everything you know about that area. In UPSC, your answer has to be very specific to what the question is. Not something else, not something related to it, nothing like that. It has to be very, if they ask one question, only that has to be answered. Nothing more, nothing less. Okay. Discuss the inadequacies in the process of industrialization in the pre-liberalized era. I told you industry, it's been a failure. So what were the inadequacies? Discuss the changes made by the government of India and the fiscal policy since liberalization. How far these changes proved to be conducive to growth with social justice in the country. Discuss post-liberalization, public finance. For faster increase in farmers' income, is it necessary to link them with corporate sector in India? The context is the farm law changes that were attempted but were subsequently given up. Your comment on that. What are the main features of TRIMS? How does it act against India's interest? It was again explicitly mentioned in the syllabus, if you remember. Look at post-liberalization, a third one, new economic policy and trade, implications of TRIPS, TRIMS, GATS, and new EXIM policy. So if you simply follow the syllabus and have notes for every point in the syllabus with respect to its impact on the Indian economy, paper 2 is going to be, even the post-liberalization part is going to be fairly straightforward to deal with. That was section A. So look at the question numbering again. 1 has A, B, C, D, E. You must attempt that. 2 has ABC, 3 has ABC, 4 has ABC. Out of these 3, you can attend. You should attend at least 1, maximum 2. Not all 3. You must leave one of these. Okay. Section B. 5 has A, B, C, D, E. That's compulsory. What are the questions? Examine the alternative model of planning given by C and Vakil. Vakil, Gadgil, and V.K.R.V. Rao. These were the 3 names that we saw. Vakil is what they already asked about Mahalanobis. The alternative model is what Vakil gave. Okay. Is service-led growth in India sustainable? Comment. If I ask you to write an answer to this, can you write an answer right now? Do you have some knowledge to write that right now? I'm not going to ask you to, don't worry. But do you feel that something can be written? That's what, if you feel you can write something, that's how a lot of these questions are going to be. When you read this entire question paper, you get a feeling all the post-liberalization questions that they ask. You feel, I can write something about it. Kisan Samman Nidhi, if you know the scheme, I can write something about it. About service sector-led growth in India sustainable, you can write something about it. So only the starting areas need actual preparation, in the sense you might have no idea about who Vakil is. You might have no idea about what happened during the British period. That you need to sit and study. Everything else, you might have some idea, or you can get some basic idea about it. Your effort has to be in adding further value to it. How to make your answer more valuable or more mark fetching. So that's why I said answer writing practice is what is more important when it comes to paper 2. What are the implications of depreciating rupee on Indian economy? If you understand the concept of depreciation of rupee, you can easily answer this question right now. Comment on FDI in multi-brand retail sector in India. Very specific question, not just FDI, in the multi-brand retail sector they are asking. It was repeatedly in current affairs, so there's a question about this. Is poverty capability deprivation? Discuss. So poverty in terms of education, health and all those things is what they are asking about. Multi-dimensional poverty is what they are focusing on. Evaluate the policy of Government of India with regard to foreign investment in the country. Do you feel that there is a need for control of their activities? Government's foreign investment policy, foreign direct investment, foreign portfolio investment. So you break down the answer into that, and do you feel that the government needs to control the foreign investors' activities better? So this is again a comment on India's foreign investment policy. India has a foreign investment policy. There is a practical side of it. What are the challenges that come in, especially in the context of pollution emissions and green tribunals having issues with them? That is the context of this question as well. What steps have been taken by the Government of India to increase exports during the last 10 years? Have these yielded the desired result? Analysis of India's export sector over the last decade. So current thing that is happening. Why second green revolution was advocated for India? Mention the recommendations of National Commission for Farmers in this regard. Again, very specific question about second green revolution and the recommendations of the National Commission. It's not current. It's based on a factual information that you should know. Distinguish between fiscal federalism, consolidation, cooperative federalism. Comment on the outcome of cooperative federalism in India. Again, something, if you are a regular reader of newspaper articles, frequently it keeps coming, especially in the context of the 16th Finance Commission being set up right now and the debates that go on between the center and the states with respect to the economic relationship between them. Fiscal federalism, fiscal consolidation, cooperative federalism, how states cooperate with each other in growing. So that is fiscal federalism about center-state relationship. Fiscal consolidation is managing the budget better. So those areas. Whether the role of women in agriculture has changed after liberalization in India. Comment. A very generic kind of thing, but you have to substantiate your answer. You can write an answer even today, even now. But how to get value to it is what you need to learn. Then explain the various estimates of rural poverty in India. What measures have been adopted by the government to reduce it? So historical aspects of measuring poverty, current measurements of poverty and all those things. How to measures taken by the government to reduce it. What are the main objectives of monetary policy adopted by RBI during the last 5 years? Discuss the steps taken by RBI to encourage investment and maintain price stability during this period. Again, last 5 years is what matters, not the history of RBI and all those things. Again, if you simply read some current newspapers which talk about the history of RBI's policy actions, the Hindu carries a lot of very informative columns called as Explained. The heading is Explained. Title of that, and they explain background of an issue. Let's say an issue props up right now, or monetary policy committee, RBI meets and makes an announcement. The Hindu usually carries an article which says, gives a background of what happened. How was this committee originally formed? What did they do? What has been the history of its activities? Reading many articles like that is what will give you idea with respect to this, right? Since UPSC can ask questions from any direction, it's very, very difficult for us to take up these topics in class. We can have generic discussions about this, again based on economic survey and current affairs, not in a structured manner. It's very difficult to say, okay, this is the syllabus, we prepare for that. The 125 marks worth of post-liberalization, they could ask from anywhere. So we have to just have wide reading of the area and wide understanding of the economy. That's all. Why, in spite of massive expansion of institutional finance, contribution of non-institutional sources in providing agricultural credit is still predominant? Why are there local money lenders still active, or local money lending mechanisms still active? That is essentially the question. What are the various forms of subsidies that go into agriculture sector in India? What is the justification for these? A general understanding of subsidies and the issues caused by them. Okay, so these are the type of questions. Now, when you read these questions, this is what might give you the feeling that, okay, this is a subject that I can tackle, because most of the questions you feel, at least I am familiar with it, I've heard of these things, the other areas I can catch up on. So in terms of learning paper 2, it's not going to be a challenge. The challenge is going to be in writing good answers which contribute value, which contribute marks to you. So answer writing practice, what is the focus here? Let's look at paper 1. I'm not going to read through the entire question, because for those who are not very familiar, it might not even No, you might not even be able to relate to it. I'll just tell you the areas from which the question is asked. Differentiate between perceived demand curve and proportional demand curve in monopolistic competitive market. Explain why the proportional demand curve is steeper than the perceived demand curve. Okay, so it's a graph. There is a graph in which a line looks like this, a different line looks like that. Why is one line in this shape in comparison to the other line? That's effectively the simplified version of this question. And they are telling in which scenario they are asking. Monopolistic competition. We saw monopolistic competition as one of the areas as well. So the question itself is graphical. In this graph, you will find a line which is like this. In that other graph, the line is different. What is the reason for it? Why is this line steeper than the other line? Okay, you are just going to draw a graph. You're going to explain why the graph is looking the way that it is looking. That's the first question. Again, the same structure is followed in paper 1 also. Total 8 questions, 50 marks each. Question number 1, question number 5, compulsory, both consisting of 5 10-mark questions. Question number 2, 3, 4, out of those 50 marks each, 15, 15, 20 is what is usually the pattern. You have to attempt 1 or 2 of them, and in the second segment also 1 or 2 of them. That's how you have to attempt. Total 5 questions that you have to answer. Discuss critically the phenomenon of classical dichotomy. Okay, so macroeconomic concept is where this will come into the picture. What is the dichotomy? Again, it's a conceptual thing. Show that ad valorem tax is preferable to specific sales tax from a firm's point of view in generating the same level of tax revenue. This might seem like a public finance question. It is public finance because it's about tax, but this is an area that we'll deal with in microeconomics as well, in certain extensions to microeconomics. But it is public finance. So there is a 10-mark from public finance that is asked over here. Examine the role of treasury bills in controlling money supply. It's from the area of money, not from the area of public finance. In the chapter called as money, the role of treasury bills in controlling money supply. Write down the major assumptions behind neoclassical loanable funds theory of interest. It could be, you can call it as either macroeconomics, neoclassical, or we will learn the same concept in microeconomics as well in theories of interest rate. I told you there are theories of rent, wage, interest, and profit. So there also it will come in. So this is one set of questions. Derive Pareto optimality conditions in production in a 2 commodities, 2 factor, 2 producers framework. Show that Pareto optimality does not necessarily guarantee equity. This we have seen. Welfare criteria, modern welfare criteria, it was there in the syllabus. Pareto criteria is explicitly mentioned. All these things, every single question that is asked here, right, we will be learning in class as a topic. In paper 1, there will be nothing beyond what is discussed in class except for environmental areas and growth areas. Except for that, there will be nothing which is not discussed in class. Everything that is asked in the question will be something that should be discussed in class. You would have studied in your notes as well. Okay, most questions are straightforward. In the sense, there isn't even an analysis that is required. Sometimes they might ask some analytical questions where they'll construct a question on their own asking, if this were to happen in this scenario, what would be the end result of it? But most scenarios, most questions, majority of the questions, exactly you would have studied the answer. It's about it. You understand the question, okay, this is the answer, you reproduce the answer. That's how the questions are going to be. In paper 2, there is a lot of thinking involved, especially in the post-liberalization period, 125 marks. But in paper 1, except for the environmental part, there's hardly any thinking involved. If you know the answer, you reproduce the answer. That's all. Write down the behavioral assumptions used in Marshallian and Walrasian approaches to market stability. Show that these two approaches become conflicting with both demand and supply curves when both demand and supply curves are positively sloped. Very first line of the syllabus was Marshallian and Walrasian approaches to price determination. If I go back again, we'll miss out on this. So I'll go back to the syllabus once again after I run through this. Then you have short run and long run equilibrium under monopolistic competition. Again, very straightforward question. Concept of underemployment equilibrium with graphical illustration. Why full employment cannot be reached automatically in Keynes' approach. This is effectively the Keynes theory. Explain Keynes theory is what they are asking. And we have now one mathematics question, 10 plus 5. Calculate equilibrium national income and interest rate by using appropriate macroeconomic model from information given below. So they have given how will the equilibrium value changes when money supply is increased by 20 crore. Okay. If you are someone who doesn't quite like mathematics, this might seem like, oh, why are they asking a mathematics question? And because they have asked it as question number B, 3A and 3C also you'll have to give a pot, even if you know A and C very well, because you have to answer A, B, and C together. However, what you will notice if you look at the previous questions that UPSC has asked, which is numerical mathematics, these questions are extremely simple. Okay, extremely direct and straightforward, where if you simply know the formula, you apply the values into the formula and you will arrive at the answer. It is only the fear of numbers for those who have a fear of numbers or the unfamiliarity with these kind of questions, which is the challenge. So again, in our textbooks, be it micro or macro, or even in Mannoor's book that is there, following concepts, some areas they'll give some numerical problems. If you simply read through those numerical problems alone, you will be able to tackle these without any major difficulty. And the advantage of attending numerical mathematical question is that it will take probably half the time required for drawing a graph and constructing and writing and explaining the concepts. So you'll save a lot of time by taking this, and it's sure shot. How can they reduce marks in a question like this? If you write it fully, you'll get all 15 marks. So they cannot reduce. So any other mark that you lose out on somewhere else, you can compensate by answering these kind of questions. Okay, that's an advantage that you have when it comes to attending numerical mathematics questions. Critically analyze classical theory of interest. They asked Keynesian already. This is classical theory of interest, sorry, which is the interest theory, first ever interest theory that was created. Money is the chapter area. Describe the mechanism of credit creation by commercial banks and its implication on multiplier effect. Analyze some of the limitations that can jeopardize the implications of multiplier effect. Money multiplier as a concept. Again, monetary theory is where we learn this. Macroeconomics. Distinguish between public goods and private goods. Explain how market failure occurs in the case of public goods. Market failure you will have in multiple cases, but microeconomics distribution theories is where you will come across, or there is towards the end there is market failures is an area that you will see. So this is an area from that. Microeconomics. What is the difference between Fisher's theory and Cambridge cash balance approach? Theory of money. Again, very straightforward. Nothing new to learn in all these things. That was section A. All the questions in section A were from micro, macro, monetary also, and maybe one question from public finance. Sometimes they follow this pattern. Most years they follow this pattern. Section A is all about micro, macro, public finance at most. Okay. Section 2 tends to be international economics, growth and development, and maybe public finance might overlap there as well, as you will see here. Critically examine per capita GDP as a crude indicator of development, growth and development theory. Explain managed floating and sterilized interventions for exchange rate, external sector or international economics. Discuss how carbon trading is helpful in reducing environmental degradation. Environment, growth and development, environment. Higher tariffs do not increase employment. They just redistribute the unemployment. Trade, restrictions to trade. So there are theories written with respect to this. Explain how equilibrium terms of trade are determined by using offer curves of trading partners. Again, it is international trade, international economics. In the very beginning itself, we have this concept of what is the logic of trade taking place. Discuss the elasticity approach and absorption approach for adjusting balance of payments. Balance of payments adjustment, the two methods. By using Stolper-Samuelson theorem, discuss the possible effects of free trade on income inequalities in developing countries. Very simple and straightforward answer from international economics again. Explain how the elasticity of demand for foreign exchange is influenced by the elasticity of home demand for imports and by the elasticity of home supply of import competing goods. Question might seem very big, but it's again a very straightforward area that is there in one of the theories of trade. Okay. Foreign exchange. So this is balance of payments where you will come across this. Then you have that is 6-7. Explain how structural transformation in economy takes place with surplus labor as per Lewis theory of economic development. Lewis theory we saw in the syllabus. What are the advantages and disadvantages of public-private partnership model for economic development? You should not answer this in the context of India. You should just generally answer this because it's not paper 2. In paper 1, you should never take India as an example, or India specific things you should not write. In general is what you should write. Growth and development is where this will come in. Discuss the issues in the debate over import substitution and export promotion for developing countries. It's not international, it is growth and development again. Trade and growth and development. Okay. Describe major components used in HDI by UNDP. Write down the methodological limitations. Suggest appropriate methods to eliminate these. Growth and development. Indices they have specifically mentioned. Discuss inverted U-shaped hypothesis of Kuznets, growth and development. Then distinguish between warranted rate of growth and natural rate of growth. Harrod's model explicitly they have given in the syllabus. Here, this question paper is what I consider to be one of the easier question papers. Okay. Always judge a subject not based on the tough question paper. Judge it based on the easy question paper is what I would say. Why? Because the norm is to ask questions which are answerable. Have question papers which are answerable. One particular year, they might ask really difficult questions, and overall everyone who writes that optional would suffer in terms of their marks. Okay, and this can happen with respect to any subject. The even high scoring subject, there are years where they intentionally make the question paper very difficult and the score gets pulled down. What we have heard based on how UPSC works is there are times when one subject has a huge number of people scoring very high marks. They undertake normalization and bring down the values. Okay, you might have actually scored more marks, but they'll reduce the values because everyone, the paper they'll consider to be very easy and they'll reduce everyone's marks. It's called normalization. And in 1 year, if everyone has scored very poorly in one optional subject, they'll raise everyone's mark as well. So do not be scared by one question paper which is very tough and you don't understand and too many application questions are there. In that year, they may have normalized the paper. So always judge any optional paper based on the easy papers. And this is what we consider to be an easy paper. If this question paper seems very challenging for you with your prior knowledge of economics, then you should consider whether you can actually take this up. Okay, both the papers, I would say, paper 1 and paper 2 are relatively easy in this particular year, 2024's paper. Okay, this was an introduction to the question paper as well. Just to quickly show you, in case you want to see the syllabus. Once again, you can take a look at the syllabus once again so that you can correlate with what we have seen. If you don't have any further such requirements, you can, if you have any questions, you can ask. If not, we can just talk about the times also. I told you weekends is when we will have the class, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 1 is the time, in that time frame. Sometimes we'll start at 9:30, sometimes we'll end at 12:30 itself. We'll start at 9, we might end at 12:30, but in this time range of 9 to 1 is when we'll have the classes. And only if we have missed out on some classes, to compensate for that, we'll have weekday classes that will be from 2:30 to 5. Okay, so this is with respect to class timings. I'll give you a better structure of how we are going to have the classes, as I told you, once we start the classes. Okay, any further questions from your end?
You just said they'll be giving all the 3 months.
That is if for an entire paper is like that, like mathematics paper and all those things, where every paper, every question is like that, they'll end up scoring 500 out of 500. No, a person who studies really well, that they cannot allow for. So they'll say like percentile kind of a concept. They'll bring down that to an acceptable, like not percentile exactly, but like how they do percentile. You don't need to score 100 out of 100 to score 100 percentile. Similarly, so what if you score 100 out of 100 percentage, they'll reduce it to something like what is an acceptable very high mark, they'll reduce it to that. But one question which is like this, they won't make any changes to it. That's what we understand, but we can't really find out the information from anywhere. There's no way of finding out that information. We go with the assumption that they will not, because in every one question in a question paper won't make that much of a difference is what because there will be some other question which is very long. You cannot go to a micro level and do all these things. So who will know that one extremely long question, so we'll compensate them by giving more marks? That I don't think would happen. So having one mathematics question is actually an advantage for those who have that. Anything else? Any specific queries that you have which will help you decide about your optional? I'll address the questions from class along with it. Sir, are we supposed to follow 150 words 2-page structure for each 10-mark subdivision? Usually, if the question itself is broken down into 2 10 marks, let's say a 20-mark question is broken into two 10 marks, they will themselves print the question, one part of the question here, 2 pages later, third page, one part of the question. So usually the page framework is predetermined. But if it's not explicitly given in your mind, you have to divide a 20 mark into 2 pages for 10 mark and 2 pages for the other 10 mark. But all other 10 mark, explicit 10 mark questions, they'll only give 2 pages as the size. Okay. Second part of the other question that is asked is the 150 word for 10 mark and 250 word for 15 mark. Are they strict about it? In paper 2, yes, they'll be very strict about it. You can't write too much to explain your concept. You can't write too little and assume that that is all done. So they'll expect you to, they are not going to sit and count, which also means that if your handwriting is very small, you are in a bit of trouble, because you have to ensure that your answer gets to at least 1.5 pages. Okay, you should not just write 150 words. You have to give the impression that you have written 150 words also. Okay, if you write all 150 words in one page and leave the other page blank, you are likely to lose marks, because they won't know how many words you have written. They can't sit and count. So you should write for 1.5 to 1 3/4 pages, but it should not exceed more than, let's say, 170 words or fall below 130 to 140 words. It should not fall below that. In paper 2, in all GS papers, this is true. Okay, in paper 1, they don't strictly follow this, because there is, for economics, there's going to be graph that is drawn, numerical questions are going to be there. For graph, that will occupy a lot of space. So even, let's say, 100 words might be enough if you are conveying the concept, but make sure to fill the 2 pages or 1 3/4 of page next side, but make sure never to exceed margins, left side, right side, below the page number at the bottom. You should never exceed that. So you should space your answer in such a way that it doesn't look cluttered, it doesn't look too spaced out. It has to be done appropriately. In paper 1, word count is not as important as in paper 2, but in paper 2, it is important to answer Ranjit's question. Anything else? How about the usage of grammar? Are they going to reduce marks for poor grammar, is what you're asking? Paper 1, not so much. Paper 2, okay, in paper 1 also. Okay, ultimately the point is this. Forget paper 1, paper 2. If you have conveyed a point correctly and there is a grammar error, still you have conveyed your point correctly. The grammar error will not cost you. But if the grammar error is going to change the meaning of the sentence you have written, then the grammar error will cost you. For example, in a place where you have to use is, you end up using was. And let's say the question is about some change that has taken place. And for the new change you have written was, then that will change the meaning itself. So there you might end up losing marks. But they are at the discretion of the evaluator. If the evaluator notices that continuously it is the grammar that is going wrong, but conceptually you are right, they may ignore it. But you are leaving it to the discretion of the evaluator there. So as long as your meaning doesn't get changed, errors in grammar might be pardoned. It might not cost you much. It is applicable in GS also, essay also. But try to keep your grammar as correct as possible. Look for constant errors that you are making. Ask someone who's very good at English to evaluate your paragraphs that you write. Some random paragraph you write and go. Look for the constant kind of errors that you are making, substantial errors that you are making, which can alter meanings itself. See if in the time frame available you are able to make those corrections. Usually error comes in when sentences become longer. Keep your sentences short, keep your sentences simple. That will reduce your possibilities of errors, and work on very basic fundamentals. Tense error is the most common error that I've seen in any papers. So make sure that present, past, future errors are not made. Okay, especially while narrating a past event. When in Tamil we have a tendency to use a bit of future tense to explain past events. So this would happen, that would happen. So when we write that, that makes it confusing. So look for those things and try to work on it. You have the time to work on it. But it's not, unless your meaning itself changes, it's not going to be a deal breaker, is what I feel. Okay. Okay. Anything else that you would like as an input from my end? Yeah. As I told you, as part of the class, we'll only have class tests. Okay, that will be almost on a daily basis that we have, unless you feel absolutely no necessity to write it. So I'll leave it to you. It won't be very strict I won't come and follow behind you, asking if you wrote the test or not. I'll ask you to write. I'll allocate a time for it. I'll come and discuss that particular question. What should be the highlights? But I'm not going to come and check your note whether you're writing it or not. That is your responsibility. After the course is over, after the next prelims, there is usually a test series time. Like right now, a test series is going on. That test series will be a part of your course itself. In the sense, you don't have to pay separately for it. That test series will be a default part of extension of this course. So you can attend the test series as a part of that. After your prelims is over, the test series will be free for you. But if you are keen on writing a test series before that, let me know. As a batch, if you let me know, I'll make preparations for that. I'm okay with that. Because what I usually find is if I conduct a long-term test along with the classes, people are not very comfortable, confident writing it, and a lot of times we conduct the test, but people hardly come and write. It's my experience in the past. So if you really want a test, and if it's not even the whole class, a few people alone want test, you can come talk to me. We can individualize and personalize that, and we can conduct tests in that. But if you are asking me what is the course structure, there is no dedicated test series as part of the course itself inside the course. Outside the course, after the course is over, after next prelims, we'll have a course that is available for you, test series that is available for you. There also you will have a choice to take a weekly test or once in 2 weeks test, depending on whether you have cleared the prelims or not. If you have cleared the prelims, take a weekly test. If you have not cleared the prelims and you want to take some time to prepare, take a test which happens once every 2 weeks. That you can take a call at that point of time. But class test will be there here. Paper 1 and paper 2 will have a mix. Okay, one day we'll write paper 2 question, one day we'll write paper 1 question, and we'll do it that way. I'll tell you the question beforehand. It's not surprise. So you can prepare and come. Just writing would happen over here. That is just to get into answer writing practice. Towards the end of the course, I'll make the question itself on the spot and you can start writing. In the initial days, it will be very relaxed. I'll tell you the question a day prior, or in the previous week itself, I'll tell you the question. You can write it and prepare for it and come and write. Writing should happen in the class in a time frame. Okay, that's with respect to that. One paper 2 book, that's all that will be provided from as a printed material. Everything else, paper 1, you'll have to entirely take notes in class from what is happening, what is being taught in class. I'll tell you the key points with respect to every topic. I'll display the graph. It's up to you. Any expansion of that, extension to that you want, that will be from effort that you will put in from your end. So key points of every topic that I cover, I'll mention it. You can jot down that. Okay, that's how it will. Paper 2 will have a printed material that will be given to you. Anything else? Sir, I have completed my UG in economics. Is it essential or advisable to go for a PG in economics alongside my UPSC preparation, or will it impact the time available? If you are not looking at a backup option, I would say it will impact your preparation, because your MA IGNO material, I've gone through it, is substantially different from our UPSC preparation material. But if you're looking at building a backup along with this preparation, then maybe not in the first instance itself. After this course is over, then you can consider applying for a master's course and doing from IGNO. That is a possibility. But right now, it will only consume more time and it will prevent you from doing anything. Because in IGNO, they are very strict about assignments. It's not like some other institutes where they allow you to write anything. So here you have to properly write assignments, submit it, go for the test, write it, and only then you can actually score well in IGNO's. That's why IGNO's MA also has much higher value than many other institutes' correspondence course material. So I think at the initial stage, it will be a burden. You can do it subsequently after the entire optional class is over. It's a build up on top of it. It's not the same material that you'll be learning. Okay. All right. If there's no further general questions that you have, we'll consider the class to be done. One-to-one conversations, if you'd like to have, you can come and talk to me. I'll be here. If not, okay, I told you I'll share my ID as well. I forgot. I'll share my ID. You can make a note and you can text me later on Telegram. So my Telegram ID is at, did I introduce myself? My name? Sonana starting la. Okay, at SARATH_RA. My name is Sharath. It's SARATH_RA. At SARATH_RA. You can text me on Telegram with any further queries that you have. Okay. Anisha, I've just given. Thank you for reminding. All right. Thank you.